Chapter 1651. Some of the larger birds also landed on the ground. They puffed out their chests and stood in 2 rows, gazing at the ferocious bird holding Yizichin. Their eyes were filled with reverence and fear. Screech! The ferocious bird circled twice in the sky, then let out a resonant cry. The birds on the ground followed suit and cried out in a language Yizichin couldn't understand at all. Afterwards, the ferocious bird descended from the sky, then tossed Yizichin to the ground. Thud! Yizichin smashed a huge crater into the thick snow. His spiritual energy was already somewhat depleted, so when he was tossed to the ground, his body was practically defenseless. It was a solid fall. Yizichin stared blankly for a long while before coming to his senses. Screech! As he lay in the snow, Yizichin could hear the cries of birds all around him. These cries weren't as loud as the ones from before, so he guessed that they belonged to the clansmen of the birds from before. It was as if Yizichin had become a ginseng on their plate, and the birds were all scrambling to get a bite of him. F***ck, I'm not going to get eaten by these birds, are I? Yizichin's entire body ached from the fall, so he struggled to his feet. He didn't want to be eaten by these birds for no apparent reason. He stuffed pills into his mouth, but he knew this was most likely the bird's main base of operations. The possibility of him killing his way out of this place was very low, but he couldn't just sit here and wait for these strange birds to eat him. The birds screeched and flew towards him. Yizichin took a pill and did his best to recover his divine power. At that moment, screech! A resonant cry sounded out in front of Yizichin. Yizichin sensed a shadow looming over him. He looked up and saw the ferocious bird that had brought him here. It stood in front of him and screeched angrily at the smaller birds. The birds really did retreat. Yizichin seized the moment to recover his divine power. At the same time, he wondered if the giant bird wanted to enjoy him alone. If it was just the smaller birds, Yizichin might be able to hold them off for a while, but if it was the giant bird... Screech! Suddenly, Yizichin heard a short but powerful cry. When he raised his head, he saw a pair of spirited eyes staring at him. This pair of eyes belonged to the flying beast. Tisk! The flying beast shouted again. It seemed to be communicating with Yizichin. What do you mean? Yizichin looked at the huge bird in confusion. No matter how knowledgeable he was, it was impossible for him to know the language of beast. Tisk! There was another brief caw, then the bird looked up, took a few steps forward, then turned back to look at Yizichin. You want me to follow you? Through its movements, Yizichin could roughly guess what it was trying to say. The flying beast nodded like a human. From the looks of it, Yizichin didn't want to eat him, but he still kept an eye on it and carefully recovered his divine power. At the same time, he patted the snow off his body and walked out of the snow. The instant he appeared, it was as if the surrounding birds wanted to devour him. The flying beast screeched once, and the other beasts instantly stopped. However, when they looked at Yizichin, their eyes flashed with greed. It was as if Yizichin had some sort of treasure on him that they couldn't ignore. Could it be sorrow relief grass? Yizichin gently rubbed the sorrow relief grass in his pocket. The venerable of numinous treasure had said it was poison. It existed to refine poisons and cure the 1,000 lotus poison. However, after spending so much time in the snowy mountains, he got the feeling that its uses weren't limited to that. The vicious beasts of the snowy mountains seemed to be very interested in the sorrow relief grass. Screech! The flying beast shouted at Yizichin, then continued on its own. It was obvious that only this flying beast could control the other bird. It was like an umbrella protecting Yizichin. Who knew if the birds would try anything after it left? Yizichin didn't dare think too much about it. He hurried after the flying beast. The flying beast's territory was vast. It seemed the entire snowy mountains were its territory. On the way, Yizichin saw quite a few ferocious beasts from other clans. When they saw Yizichin, their eyes flashed with fervent light. However, the giant bird merely shot them a glance, and they all fell to the ground, trembling. "You're the gang leader here, aren't you?" Yizichin sensed that the flying beast truly had no ill intentions, so he relaxed and started chatting with it. The flying beast could understand the human language, but it couldn't speak the human language. It tilted its head and glanced at Yizichin, then screeched, its eyes flashing with bewilderment and confusion. "Gang leader means boss, leader, or king. It seems to me that the vicious beasts here are all quite afraid of you. You should be the fiercest here, right?" said Yizichin. This time, the flying beast completely understood. It nodded proudly, as if confirming Yizichin's explanation. "You really aren't modest at all." Yizichin chuckled. This beast was clearly different from what he'd imagined. The way he'd seen it, vicious beasts were bloodthirsty, but this one seemed a bit like a tsundere. In particular, when it mentioned its status, it held its head high, like a primary school student who'd just scored 100 points. However, Yizichin was more concerned about the fact that he'd yet to encounter anyone else who'd entered the snowy mountains. Neither the Ocean Emperor nor the Demon Emperor had sensed it. He didn't see any treasures, either. Aside from the 1,000 lotus flowers, which could be considered a treasure trove, the rest. All he saw were packs of vicious beasts. The only good thing about being captured by the flying beasts was that they were much closer to the palace at the top of the snowy mountains. This snowy mountain could be considered to be made up of countless cones. The Snowy Mountain Palace was located at the peak of the Snowy Mountain Range in the center. There were countless other mountain ranges around this mountain range that were connected to it. The mountain range occupied by the flying beasts belonged to the second ring of the mountain range, the one closest to the palace. It was very close to the palace. There was no way he could outrun the bird. There was no way to fly here, and no matter how fast he ran, he couldn't outrun it. Yizichin just didn't know why the bird was looking for him. It was still bleeding from the wounds Yang Jian had left on its body, but it didn't bother to tend to them. Instead, it just continued on its way. After walking for more than an hour, Yizichin noticed that the path they were taking wasn't quite right. They weren't walking along the main path of the mountain range at all. Instead, they were at the edge of the mountain range, and if they walked a few more steps they would reach a cliff. "Hey, Brother Eagle!" When they were about to reach the edge, Yizichin stopped. The bird looked a bit like an eagle. Yizichin had chatted with it quite a bit on the way, so he might as well just call it that. The eagle glanced back at him. Yizichin said, "There's no more path ahead." "There's no path ahead. Are we still going to keep going forward?" "Screech!" The eagle called out briefly again, and nodded in a very human-like manner. "Stop messing around. There's already a path ahead, and I can't fly. Do you want me to fall to my death?" Yizichin was speechless. The eagle blinked as if in thought, then put on a look of disdain, but it still squatted down. "You want me to sit on it?" Yizichin asked. The eagle nodded, then flapped its wings. From the looks of it, it seemed to be saying, "Hurry up, I'm not going to help you if you keep dawdling." Yizichin didn't expect the eagle to be so friendly and let Yizichin sit on its back. To be honest, although Yizichin hadn't had a mount after entering the cultivation circle for so long, sitting on the eagle's back was quite a novelty for him. Yizichin stepped on the eagle's wings and sat on its back, then looked at his empty left arm in confusion. Isn't this Yang Guo and his eagle? This scene could be used to film a new version of The Return of the Condor Heroes. I wonder where Auntie is? The eagle soared into the sky, and when it flapped its wings, a demonic wind blew in all directions. Yizichin clutched the eagle's feathers tightly, then lay on its back and watched as it circled the mountain range. He never would have guessed that the back of the mountain range would be a whole new world. There was a cave in the cliff. Only a bird like the eagle could find this kind of cave. Below the cave was a cliff shrouded in clouds and mist. Beasts of the land couldn't possibly find this place. The eagle slowed down its flapping of wings. The cave seemed to be its home, and the opening was just big enough for it to enter. Screech! As soon as they entered, the eagle flapped its wings and tossed Yizichin down. Fortunately, there was some dry grass on the ground, so Yi Zichen had recovered quite a bit of his divine power. He didn't fall too hard. With his back to the eagle, he raised his middle finger, but before Yi Zichen could complain, he saw that there was a human girl lying in the cave. Yi Zichen was absolutely certain that this was a human girl. She looked to be in her teens, but Yi Zichen had no recollection of her at all. Based on the way she was curled up, he could tell that she was very cold. She'd already lost consciousness, so she couldn't use any spiritual energy. Or rather, he couldn't sense any spiritual energy from her at all. However, the sickly red on her face made Yi Zichen think of Pu Jingwan and the others. She'd been poisoned by Thousand Lotus. The girl's aura was weak. She lay curled up on the grass, trembling uncontrollably and sweating profusely. Yi Zichen looked into the cave. Although it was a cave with its back facing the wind, the temperature inside the snowy mountains was still very low. For the girl, it was unbearably cold. With a wave of his hand, he placed a seal around the cave, then lit a ball of heavenly fire on his palm. Screech. Chapter 1652. Sensing the eagle's fear, Yi Zichen chuckled and joked with it. Brother Eagle, you're the boss, yet you're already scared of this little fire? Don't worry too much, I'm just trying to keep the girl warm. I'll get rid of the fire soon. When Yi Zichen mentioned the boss, the eagle immediately revealed a proud expression, as if it was saying, "Do you think you can scare me just by lighting the fire?" However, Yi Zichen could still sense the fear of fire in its eyes. It was a fear ingrained in the bones of wild beasts. The temperature of the cave gradually increased, and the curled-up girl felt much more comfortable. Her furrowed brows relaxed slightly, but her face was still flushed with a sickly red. Yi Zichen knew that the condors were afraid of fire, so after stabilizing the temperature of the cave, Yi Zichen extinguished the flames, then walked in front of the girl and flipped her sleeve up. As expected, there was a dark red line on her arm as well. She'd been poisoned by the Thousand Lotus powder. Her sleeves were flipped up, and the line on her arm had long since passed her shoulder. Huh! At that moment, the eagle also walked over and looked down at Yi Zichen with a questioning gaze. You came all the way here just to get me to use the sorrow relief grass to save this human girl? Yi Zichen tilted his head and looked at the eagle. In the eyes of ferocious beasts, outsiders like them were all enemies. He didn't expect the eagle to actually save the human girl, and even go to the snow ape to steal the sorrow relief grass. He didn't expect the eagle to be such a good one. The eagle nodded like a human, and occasionally placed its wings on the girl's forehead, as if to feel her temperature. But I know what to do. I do have the sorrow relief grass. Am I supposed to just feed it to her? Yi Zichen looked at the eagle. Huh? The eagle nodded vigorously, as if confirming Yi Zichen's words. No way. It's so simple and crude. You don't even need to work on it? Yi Zichen said in disbelief. Don't treat us humans like you Yao beasts. Our digestive and absorption abilities aren't as good as yours. Huh? The eagle screeched loudly, as if telling Yi Zichen to do as he said. I already told you, humans aren't as good at absorbing as you Yao beasts. Tell me, how did your big eagle? Just as Yi Zichen finished his sentence, Engguo, who was lying on the hay, suddenly let out a painful groan. Yi Zichen was also worried, while the eagle looked towards the girl worriedly, then continuously flapped its wings and screeched. He had to admit that there was no other way. The Lord of Spiritual Treasure was the one who told him to get the sorrow relief grass. If it weren't for the Lord of Spiritual Treasure, Yi Zichen wouldn't even know about the sorrow relief grass. As the Venerable of Numinous Treasure had never told him how to use it, he naturally did not know. Yi Zichen didn't want to give it to the girl directly for her own good. But in this situation, the girl's condition was already very bad, and he didn't know how to use the worry-relieving herb. Maybe there was no better solution than feeding it to her. The girl's condition was getting worse and worse, and the eagle was crying out anxiously. Then let's try everything we can. The dark red dotted line had already spread past her shoulders. One could only imagine how long she could last. Yizichin took out a stalk of sorrow relief grass and placed it in the girl's mouth. However, since she'd already lost consciousness, she wouldn't swallow it on her own. Sorry for the offense. Yizichin cupped his hands at the girl, then pressed them against her skin. Divine power surged between his fingers. Yizichin used his own divine power to drag the sorrow relief grass into her stomach and let it absorb itself. This seemed simple, but it took Yizichin a full hour to finish. Perhaps it was because the girl had a sensitive constitution, but whenever he touched her, she would moan. Yizichin's mind was in chaos. Finally, he swallowed the sorrow relief grass. His forehead beaded with sweat, Yizichin let out a long sigh and sat to the side. "Brother Eagle, is this enough?" asked Yizichin. Screech. The eagle nodded happily, then sat down by the girl's side like an obedient baby waiting for its little master to wake up. Yizichin was very confused when he saw that. The eagle was obviously a creature of the Transcendence Mausoleum, while the human girl was undoubtedly an expert who'd come from the outside in search of good fortune. The two of them were completely unrelated, but the current situation made Yizichin feel like the eagle was actually being raised by the girl. This was way too strange. Also, everyone here was at least an emperor-level expert. The girl looked to be only 16 or 17, yet she'd become an emperor? This kind of talent was probably even more monstrous than the Divine Arbiter's nephew. Brother Eagle. Yizichin wanted to say a few words to the eagle, but it completely ignored him and remained by the girl's side. Yizichin rubbed his nose bitterly and said no more. He walked to the cave's entrance and looked outside. The majestic palace was right in front of him. If he could fly, he'd reach it in less than 100 breaths of time. However, he couldn't fly here. If he walked, who knew how long he'd have to walk? He was more concerned about the great sage and the others. He didn't know if Guli had safely returned the sorrow relief grass, but he was also worried about whether they were worried about his safety. Screech! All of a sudden, the huge eagle in the cave let out an excited cry. When Yizichin heard that, he turned around and saw that the girl on the hay was already showing signs of waking up. He walked up to her, only to see her slowly open her eyes. Screech! Screech! The eagle happily circled around her. Yizichin could sense how weak she was, so he took out a divine-grade spirit recovery pill and placed it in her hand. "You're a human?" The girl didn't accept the pill right away. Yizichin nodded noncommittally. The girl clearly hadn't expected to see a human here either. A hint of surprise flashed through her eyes. Then, she looked at the huge condor and said, "You were the one who captured her, weren't you?" The eagle pretended not to understand human language and looked curiously at the girl. The girl smiled helplessly, patted the eagle's wings, then smiled apologetically at Yizichin. "I'm sorry, I've delayed your time fighting for good fortune and treasures." "It's no problem. You're very weak right now, so this pill should be useful to you." Yizichin handed the pill to her. The girl leaned in and sniffed it. A divine-grade spirit recovery pill. "It seems you're no ordinary person in the outside world. Anyone who can make it here can't possibly be an ordinary person," laughed Yizichin. The girl didn't retort. Anyone who could make it here was at least an emperor-level expert. In the outside world, they were all overlord-level existences. They naturally weren't ordinary people. However, the ordinary people she was referring to weren't actually these people. But since Yizichin didn't want to talk about it, she wouldn't force the topic. "Let's chat." "Thanks." The girl didn't act coy. She accepted the pill. A divine-grade spirit recovery pill was indeed the best tonic for someone like her, who'd run out of spiritual energy. As soon as the pill entered her mouth, she sat down cross-legged to recover her divine power. The divine-grade spirit recovery pill contained quite a bit of divine power, but it definitely wasn't enough to help an emperor-level expert recover completely. After recovering roughly 30%, the girl emerged from her meditative state. Screech! Suddenly, a serious look flashed through the eagle's eyes, and it called out to the young girl. The girl narrowed her eyes as if she could understand the eagle's words. Do you need help? The eagle shook its head. Then be careful. As soon as he finished speaking, the eagle flew out of the cave. As he watched it leave, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. He couldn't help but curse inwardly. Brother Eagle, when you leave, take me out too. Big White said outsiders invaded his territory. He has to go out and deal with it. When he returns, I'll have him take you out, said the girl, as if she'd read Yi Zichen's thoughts. Outsiders? That's. To them, the ones who are outsiders are naturally us. The girl smiled. Then I don't know if I should say something. Yi Zichen's eyes flashed with hesitation. You're sort of my savior. If you have anything to say, just ask. As long as it's something I can say, I won't hold anything back, laughed the girl. You've known the eagle for a long time? Are you talking about Big White? The girl smiled. Of course I don't know him. I came in from the outside as well. When I entered the snowy mountains, I was directly transported to Big White's territory. I was nearly eaten by those birds, but Big White saved me. He has a good impression of humans. I don't know, but he's pretty good to me. Pretty much all the treasures around his territory were snatched by him for me. Yi Zichen was speechless. Outsiders like us have to fight ferocious beasts just to get some treasures. This girl's luck is good. She took a liking to the Overlord the moment she came in, and the Overlord helped her snatch treasures. Isn't that infuriating? Maybe it's because I look a bit similar to Big White's mistress when he was alive, so he has a good impression of me. But don't ask me about Big White's past. I didn't ask him in depth, so I don't know that. This girl really does seem to know how to read minds. Yi Zichen did want to ask about Big White's past, but before he could, the girl cut him off. Yi Zichen raised his eyebrows at being unable to understand Big White's past. You know the language of beasts? A bit. Do you know what it means to chat awkwardly? That's what Yi Zichen and the girl in front of him felt. They didn't know each other before, so their communication was limited to one asking and the other answering. Oh yeah, I still don't know your name. You saved my life. I will definitely return the favor after I get out, said the girl. Yi Zichen hesitated for a moment. He didn't really want to use his real name, but this was a favor from at least an emperor-level expert. Yi Zichen couldn't bear to reject it. Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen decided to say his real name after thinking about it for a moment. To his surprise, the girl's eyes lit up when she heard his name. Is your mother Yi Rong? Chapter 1653. Auntie. Aunt? Yi Zichen couldn't help but frown as he looked at the girl, who had raised her chin and placed her hands on her hips as if she wanted to call Yi Zichen Auntie. Miss, this is not the way to take advantage of others. She looked to be only 15 or 16 years old. In the upper three realms, one's age couldn't be determined just by looking at one's face, but Yi Zichen was certain that she was no older than 100. No matter what, Yi Zichen had lived for more than 100 years. Wasn't calling this girl aunt a joke? Who took advantage of you? I'm your aunt. The young girl stared at him seriously. Your mother is Yi Rong, right? Indeed. I am the youngest daughter of the Gu family, Gu Luolin. According to your mother's seniority in the Gu family, you should call me aunt. The girl pouted, looking very excited. The Gu family hadn't had any descendants for nearly 100 years, and she had always been the youngest daughter in the Gu family. Even though Yi Rong had returned to the Gu clan as the Lord of 7 Stars and was the same generation as her, she still had to call Yi Rong clan sister. Ever since she was young, her biggest dream had been to become an elder. When she found out that Yi Rong had a son, she was overjoyed. She kept clamoring for Yi Rong to bring him back so that she could take a good look at her eldest nephew. However, Yi Rong never took Yi Zichen back, nor did she use the surname Gu in front of others. She had never imagined that she would meet her eldest nephew in this mausoleum. Gu Luolin couldn't stop smiling, while her eyes shone with joy. She sat obediently on the hay, waiting for Yizichen to call her aunt. You said that you are from the Gu family, and my mother returned to the Gu family? Yeah. I know that my mother is a member of the Gu family, but that's a lower plane within a lower plane. How can the Gu family here be the same as the Gu family over there? I don't know about that. In short, Father said that Sister Yirong is a member of the Gu family. She's my elder sister. From the tone of Gu Luolin's speech, she seemed to be an inexperienced young girl. To say that she had lived for nearly 100 years was really overestimating her. Perhaps the current state of 15 or 16 was her true age. Yizichen tilted his head and looked at Gu Luolin. Yizichen understood her thoughts very well. It was a typical child's desire to become an adult as soon as possible. When he saw her expectant expression, Yizichen couldn't help but sigh. Since my mother is your elder sister, then even if I want to call you, shouldn't I call you auntie? Auntie is a form of address from the father's generation. Ah, really? Gu Luolin blinked her eyes innocently, then chuckled. Everything's fine now. Hurry up and call me auntie. Hurry up, Gu Luolin kept urging him. She sat upright on the hay and occasionally made a few gestures, as if she was recalling the way the elders of the clan sat when they first met her. Yizichen glanced at her, then ignored her. Calling her Aunt Xianji was a matter of course. She was Yi Rong's close friend, and regardless of age or cultivation, she was worthy of being called aunt. Gu Luolin. She looked like a little girl. Besides, if Yizichen called her aunt, wouldn't that be admitting he was a member of the Gu family? He hadn't forgotten the white-robed Guzichen's predicament. Yizichen had sworn that no matter what, he wouldn't enter the Gu family. If he did, everything would repeat itself, so he wanted to change history. The Gu family, no matter what, he wouldn't enter. He wouldn't use the surname Gu. Hey, what are you doing? Hurry up and call me auntie. Hurry up, shouted Gu Luolin. Yizichen raised his hand and rapped Gu Luolin on the head. Gu Luolin couldn't help but recall how her clansmen had always treated her like this back in the clan. No rapping on the head. You'll make me stupid. Gu Luolin subconsciously blurted out these words. As soon as she finished speaking, she covered her small mouth with her hand and immediately put on an angry expression like that of an elder. Impudent! Seriously, little girl. It's so much better to be a junior, yet you insist on being an elder. Don't even think about calling me auntie. There are so many members of the Gu family. My mother might have recognized the wrong family. Or maybe your family saw that my mother was the Lord of 7 Stars and wanted to get close to her, said Yizichen. Bullshit! Gu Luolin shouted in her Lolita voice. It was clear that she was furious. We're the only Gu family in the entire God, Yao, and Demon realm. Everyone knows our status. Lord of 7 Stars. Even the Emperor's star would find it difficult to gain our approval. We know how to get close to you. Hurry up and apologize. A Lolita was a Lolita. Even when she was angry, there was a hint of cuteness in her tone. Yizichen grinned at the furious Gu Luolin. Just as he was about to say something, an image suddenly flashed through his mind. He looked solemnly at Gu Luolin. You said the Gu family is the only one? Gu Luolin sensed Yizichen's solemn expression. Even the inexperienced Gu Luolin's heart trembled. That's right. What about it? Is the Gu family famous among the gods, Yao, and demons? Asked Yizichen. Of course. Although our Gu family doesn't occupy a divine mountain as our foundation, our reputation is far greater than that of the other sacred clans. I wouldn't dare say I know all of them. Those supremes and diviners are too weak to know about us, but I dare say they know all of the rulers and above. Gu Luolin lifted her chin and snorted proudly. All rulers and above knew about us. Yizichen's brows sank. He rested his chin on his right hand and his eyes flashed with thought. When Gu Luolin saw his solemn expression, she tilted her head to the side. What is it? Are you sure you know everything? Why wouldn't I be sure? All rulers and above know about our Gu family. There are quite a few hegemons who, after becoming a hegemon, would go to the Gu clan to let us know that they have become a hegemon. Yi Zichen's expression grew increasingly solemn. At the same time, he took out a cigarette and lit it. Those familiar with Yi Zichen all knew that whenever he lit a cigarette, it meant that something extremely grave was weighing on his mind. Ahem. What's that? Shush, Yi Zichen squinted his eyes. Yi Zichen squinted his eyes, then took out a few lollipops and chucked them to Gu Luolin's side. Go play on the side. Gu Luolin had definitely never seen a lollipop before. She was infuriated when a junior scolded her like that. She glared at Yi Zichen and wanted to scold him, but when she saw his solemn expression, she didn't want to disturb him and get scolded. In the end, she could only purse her lips and pick up the lollipop on the ground. Gu Luolin's nose twitched. Just the smell alone was enough to make her gulp. She tore open the packaging and put it in her mouth. So sweet. Gu Luolin, who was slightly angry earlier, immediately revealed a happy smile. Then, she stopped bothering Yi Zichen, and obediently ran to the dry grass in the cave to lick her lollipop. She even carefully put away the other lollipops so that she could eat them slowly in the future. Could it be him? Yi Zichen's eyes flashed with sharpness as he sat at the entrance of the cave and chucked cigarette after cigarette. Gu Luolin's words truly caused him to think of some very serious questions. He had felt that these questions were very strange before, but after Gu Luolin said them, he felt that it was even more strange. But he didn't go up the mountain. What is his purpose in doing this? Only Yi Zichen himself knew who the Yi Zichen mentioned was. Gu Luolin, who licked the lollipop, only knew that she could hear Yi Zichen muttering something that she didn't understand as she sat on the grass. It was just like how the seniors in the clan would always say things that she didn't understand. You're clearly my nephew, but you don't call me little auntie. So rude, Gu Luolin pouted and muttered. Gu Luolin pouted and muttered. However, her little mouth was sparkling and translucent from the lollipop. Licking the lollipop, Gu Luolin's mood became much better. She snorted and said, "For its sake, I won't blame you for being ignorant. Polite Junior. Who exactly is he?" Yi Zichen was still immersed in his own thoughts. That person's actions continuously flashed through his mind like a movie. The more he thought about it, the more obvious that person's strangeness was, and the more he couldn't find a reasonable explanation. Could it be that he did it on purpose? Or does he really not know? If it really is him, then it would be very hard for him to do it in secret, right? Yi Zichen frowned deeply, while he only smoked a few cigarettes from the entire pack. Screech! All of a sudden, a sharp, yet slightly sorrowful cry sounded out from afar. The cry was very familiar, it was like the cry of the eagle from before. Goodbye. Gu Luolin's reaction was much more determined than Yi Zichen's. She had stayed with the eagle for a long time, so she knew very well whether the cry belonged to the eagle or not. She instantly stood up from the grass. At the same time, Yi Zichen also suppressed his previous thoughts. Yi Zichen asked when he saw Gu Luolin's anxious expression. What happened? Dabai is in danger. Gu Luolin's face was filled with anxiety. Gu Luolin's little face was filled with anxiety. Then, she ran towards the entrance of the cave. I have to hurry over and help it. Hearing that, Yi Zichen's heart tensed up and he grabbed her arm. My dear lady, stop messing around. Do you think we're on dry land? This is a cliff, and below us is a 10,000 feet cliff. If we fall down from here, forget about meat pancakes, we won't even have any meat left. Dear lady? Gu Luolin blinked. Haha, you admit that I'm your senior, right? Yi Zichen was completely confused. Since when did words like dear lady and little ancestor become used to address someone senior? Why didn't Yi Zichen know that? It was clearly similar to tone particles. People often used it in the modern realm, and Yi Zichen had encountered quite a few gods, Yao, and demons. But when it came to Gu Luolin, she's truly inexperienced. That was the only way Yi Zichen could understand it. Chapter 1654. Yi Zichen could tell from the bird's cry just now that it was in a difficult situation. If his guess was right, it had to be the outsiders Gu Luolin had mentioned before it left. They'd forced the bird into dire straits. However, the bird was clearly a lord-level savage beast. How could someone threaten it? Kuei Lin? Yi Zichen muttered to himself. Of all the people who'd entered, only Kuei Lin seemed like a threat to the bird. Of course, the venerable of spiritual treasures or the red demons were also possible threats. Gu Luolin was still yelling about going over to help. All Yi Zichen could do was tug at her and scold her. Are you out of your mind? There's a cliff down there. But I can fly. Gu Luolin blinked. This slap was solid. Yi Zichen had even called her out for being out of her mind, but little did he know that she'd known all along that this was a cliff. She could fly? Could it be that he could use a divine flying artifact here? Yi Zichen had never used one before. In the past, he'd always flown in the air. Divine flying artifacts were only for people below the diviner level, and he hadn't used them ever since he'd become a diviner. He couldn't fly in the air once he reached the snowy mountains. No one else had mentioned this, so he hadn't thought about it. It seemed that they hadn't considered the issue of divine flying artifacts either. Just as Yi Zichen was wondering whether they'd be useful here, a pair of translucent wings formed from the power of the wind appeared behind Gu Luolin. Yi Zichen was dumbfounded. Complete mastery of the wind element. When he saw Gu Luolin's wings, his eyes flashed with astonishment. Her wings were wings of the wind, which could only be condensed after one's mastery of the wind element reached a high degree of mastery. Given Yi Zichen's current mastery of the wind element, forget two, he couldn't even condense half a pair. He hadn't expected this girl to be so accomplished in the wind element. If she condensed 2 pairs of wings, she'd probably condensed a Tao heart. Look. When she released her wings, Gu Luolin even spun 2 rounds. The surrounding wind surrounded her. She was like a wind fairy surrounded by the wind as she spun on her tiptoes. Can your wind wings carry people? If you can, bring me along. Maybe I know the people who are coming. Even if I don't know them, I can still help. He couldn't rule out the possibility that the intruders were the venerable of numinous treasure and company. Especially since Yang Jian saw that Yi Zichen had been captured by the eagle. He felt that it might be them who had come to ask for Yi Zichen. If it were them, so long as Yi Zichen stepped in, everything would be easily resolved. You! Gu Luolin sized up Yi Zichen. Are you good? It was clear that Gu Luolin had noticed how pitifully low Yi Zichen's cultivation level was. Yi Zichen couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Just bring me down. All right, if anything happens, hurry up and call me. I'll go and save you. This young lady is really treating me as a form of address for a junior to address an elder, as expected of a complete stage wind element expert. When Gu Luolin brought Yi Zichen down from the cliff, it wasn't like when the eagle had grabbed him and caused his face to hurt. Instead, Gu Luolin basically didn't feel any wind at all. Even if there was wind, it was just a gentle breeze. The cliff was terrifyingly high. Yi Zichen and Gu Luolin had to pass through at least 3 layers of clouds before they could see the ground. Ugh! The eagle on the snowy mountain glared at the intruders in front of it angrily, while there were plenty of bird corpses around the intruders. Actually, the eagle's situation wasn't as bad as Yi Zichen and Gu Luolin thought. Its cries earlier were actually for its dead clansmen. However, the eagle's situation wasn't good either. It had yet to recover from the wounds Yang Jian had left on it. The intruders took advantage of its injuries and focused all their attacks on its previous wounds. As a result, although there weren't any new wounds on the eagle's body, the original wounds were much deeper than before, causing blood to flow down its pure white wings. Lord Demon Emperor, this beast is a bit troublesome. One of the intruders was a short man with a pipe in his mouth. His eyes flashed with solemnity. Smoke billowed from the pipe in his mouth. The eagle stared intently at the smoke. It was precisely this smoke that had killed so many of its generals. This man was the ruler of the western regions, Tai Tan. The Yao had always been a nation of poisons. As the ruler of a country, Tai Tan's poison arts had reached the pinnacle of perfection. The pipe in his mouth was actually a divine artifact he'd expended nearly all of his resources to create. It was ranked 27th on the divine artifact rankings. It really will be hard to deal with, nodded Jiao Hai, the king of the southern kingdom. The two Yao rulers had already switched sides completely to Kuei Lin's side. However, it was strange. Of the previously vast army of demon emperors, only 4 remained, including the demon emperor himself. The others were nowhere to be found. Isn't it better that it's hard to deal with? Kuei Lin laughed heartily. It seems I'm quite lucky to have encountered such a powerful beast. Devil Emperor Kuei Lin smiled playfully. The 3 people at his side all had powerful auras, and they were all imperial emperors. That made it so that the flying beasts in the area didn't dare to attack them. The beast we encountered earlier seemed to be the northern mountain snow ape. It must be guarding a supreme treasure. If it weren't for the temptation of transcendence, I would definitely kill it and take the treasure. Lord, you mean? If I'm not mistaken, this beast must be guarding a heaven-defying treasure. Greed flashed through the demon emperor's eyes. When he'd first encountered the snow ape, he'd sensed that it was guarding a shocking treasure. However, the snow ape was simply too far away from the palace. Anyone who entered the snowy mountains had to race against time. If he wasted too much time with the snow ape, what if someone obtained the good fortune of transcendence from the palace? Transcendence. That would be like throwing away a watermelon and picking up a sesame seed. In order to transcend, the demon emperor had given up on the snow ape's treasure and hurried to the palace. But unexpectedly. I didn't expect this. I didn't expect this. I didn't see any treasures on my way to the palace, but I didn't expect to meet a bird like you here. I just wanted to pass by and didn't want to attract unnecessary trouble. But now it seemed that luck really couldn't be stopped. I'm certain of your cultivation. With you sealing the path, no one else will be able to take even half a step forward. I haven't encountered anyone else, so I'm the fastest. Since I have nothing better to do, I can't possibly travel empty-handed. Since that's the case, I'll take the treasure you're guarding. There was an indescribable confidence in the demon emperor's expression. This beast before him seemed to be very strong. Even Tai Tan and Jiao Hai had said that it wasn't easy to deal with. It truly was powerful. If this beast had encountered anyone else, perhaps those invaders wouldn't have been able to take advantage of it. However, it could only blame its terrible luck. Or perhaps Kuei Lin's luck was just too good. He'd encountered this beast. In that case, the beast's only fate would be death. The beast might seem intimidating, but it was actually weak on the inside. Its true ferocity was never revealed on the surface. Only when it was weak on the inside would it use its intimidating appearance to strike fear into the hearts of others. Moreover, the beast's injuries weren't light. Screech! The eagle screeched. It could understand Kuei Lin's words, and the fury in its eyes deepened. It flapped its wings, stirring up a monstrous wind. Countless vortexes appeared around the snowy mountain. The howling wind made Jiao Hai, Tai Tan and the others unable to bear it. They had to release their god power to set up a boundary around them. Angry? Kuei Lin glanced at the eagle. No. It seems you're afraid. My guess is correct. You really are guarding the treasure. I can see that you're anxious and want to use your anger to hide your unease. Screech. If you're afraid now, why did you let your clansmen stop me? Why didn't you just let me go? The demon emperor rose into the air, releasing strands of purplish-black demonic energy from his palm. This demonic energy was as thin as silk. No matter how much the monstrous wind howled, it didn't move in the slightest. In the blink of an eye, the demonic energy in the demon emperor's hand transformed into strands that wrapped around the surrounding birds. They couldn't move, but the strands continued to contract, until bloody mist exploded. The surrounding birds didn't even have a chance to resist before they were crushed by the strands. Screech! The enraged eagle could no longer tolerate the demon emperor's cruelty to its people. It flapped its wings and scattered some of the snow on the snowy mountain. Then, it swung its huge wings at the demon emperor with a whistling gale. "Your Highness!" Jiao Hai and the others cried out. Before long, the eagle's wings were gently lifted up by the demonic energy strands in the demon emperor's hand. "Deal with the other beasts. Don't worry about this guy." "Yes." Jiao Hai, Tai Tan, and the demon clan leader took the opportunity to leave. When the eagle saw that the little bug, the demon king, was still alive, it screeched and flapped its wings at him again. "Why didn't you learn your lesson? Your attacks can't do anything to me." The demon emperor, wrapped in demonic qi, walked out from under the wing. Immediately, the demonic qi around the demon emperor turned into countless threads that pierced through the wing, firmly fastening it to the ground of the snowy mountain range. Screech! The eagle screeched. It tried its best to retract its wings, but the strands of demonic energy were extremely strong. "I can tell that you're not an ordinary beast. You have spirituality. Why don't you be my mount? Once I transcend, I'll bring you out of this place. How about that?" Screech! "You don't agree?" The demon emperor gently hooked his finger. The strands of demonic energy instantly pierced through the eagle's other wing. Chapter 1655. Several sharp wind blades sliced through Kuei Lin's neck with unerring accuracy. These wind blades were so sharp that they could slice through a steel plate in the blink of an eye, let alone a body. The wind blades did indeed slice through the demon emperor's neck, but the bloody scene of his head being separated from his body didn't appear. Kuei Lin transformed into a cloud of purplish-black mist. The wind blades pierced through the mist and landed on the mountain across from him, slicing the entire mountain into two. Dabai. Gu Luolin landed in front of Dabai, who was half lying on the ground after being pierced by the demonic threads. Fresh blood flowed down from its huge body, and its pitch-black eyes were filled with sorrow. Tears welled up in Gu Luolin's eyes. The demonic threads clearly had a corrosive effect. In just a short while, several finger-sized holes had been corroded into the eagle's wing. As the holes grew larger, the demonic threads also became as thick as a finger. "You bastard!" Gu Luolin's eyes were filled with resentment. She cocked her head to the side to look at the demon emperor, who had retreated several dozen meters away. She clenched her fists so hard that they creaked. Why hadn't the wind blades been faster? They should have just sliced off his head. "Dabai, it hurts, right? Bear with it a little longer, and I'll let you out." As a ferocious beast overlord, it had to maintain its dignity. It had been enduring the pain in its wings. When it saw Gu Luolin, it even squeezed out a smile and leaned its head towards Gu Luolin, trying to wipe away the tears at the corner of her eyes. "You must be a human, right? How could you ally yourself with a vicious beast?" Kuei Lin's eyes twinkled with disdain. Gu Luolin glared at him viciously. The hatred in her eyes didn't match her appearance at all. One could sense the deep hatred in her eyes. She made a grabbing motion in the air, and a dagger conjured from the wind appeared in her hand. The dagger was extremely sharp, and under Gu Luolin's control, it didn't take long for the demonic threads to be severed. The severed threads immediately transformed into mist that fused with Kuei Lin's demonic aura. The eagle rose to its feet after being freed from the demonic threads. However, its left wing could no longer extend as proudly as before. Kuei Lin. At that moment, Yi Zichen walked out of the snow. The surviving flying beasts landed by the eagle's side. Knowing that the beasts had reinforcements, Tai Tan, Jiao Hai, and the demon patriarch joined Kuei Lin. "Star Lord Yi, we really are fated to meet such a huge snowy mountain." Kuei Lin laughed heartily, acting as if nothing had happened between them. "Star-Lord Yi, have you taken a fancy to the treasures here?" Yi Zichen said nothing, and Kuei Lin's smile gradually faded. "It can't be, Star-Lord Yi. Could it be that you're also in cahoots with these beasts? We're all from the three realms, and our objective here is to seize treasures and fortune. These beasts are our common enemies. Don't tell me you want to become enemies with me because of these uncivilized beasts? In my impression, the Demon Emperor is a decisive person. When did he learn to be so eloquent?" "I'm just stating the facts." When he saw Yi Zichen, Kuei Lin was somewhat apprehensive. Of course, he wasn't afraid of Yi Zichen. Rather, he was worried about the expert backing Yi Zichen. The emperors obviously viewed Yi Zichen as their leader. No matter where he went, a group of great emperors followed him. As Kuei Lin spoke, he looked around in search of the other emperors. Yi Zichen noticed his gaze and knew what he was thinking. In truth, the way he saw it, it would be best if they didn't fight here. The Demon Emperor was one of the three emperors, so his cultivation naturally went without saying. The kings of the western and southern regions weren't mediocre, and the Demon Patriarch accompanying them didn't seem to be easy pickings, either. Yang Jian and the others weren't with him. Just him and Gu Luolin. It would be difficult for them to take advantage of them. In truth, Gu Luolin wasn't too bad. After all, she'd condensed a Tao heart of wind. Yi Zichen had only just become a ruler. In a battle of this level, he wasn't even half a person. However, before he could say anything else, Gu Luolin walked over, her eyes blazing with fury. "Who hurt Whitey?" "I did. Is there a problem with that?" Kuei Lin laughed coldly. "Although I hurt him, I didn't injure his core. I still want to tame him and make him my mount." "Then go to hell." Such cold words, coming from Gu Luolin's mouth, seemed utterly out of place. Instantly, countless cyclones appeared around her. Her long, black hair danced in the wind. Even the Demon Emperor and the others, who were a few dozen meters away, sensed the change in the wind. Wind track. Whoosh! The wind vortex, which had been relatively mild before, instantly turned into several tornadoes that could devour people. The tornadoes howled through the air, dispersing all the accumulated snow in their wake. Even the rocks of the mountain range were swept up by the tornadoes, leaving long cracks in the ground. The Demon Emperor and the others didn't dare be careless. They joined forces and formed a barrier in front of them. "Your Excellency, aren't we going to attack?" Jiao Hai frowned. "You don't know who that person is. If you attack him, you'll have to fight the other emperors." "Have you forgotten how you lost your life to Shuiyang?" roared the Demon Emperor. Jiao Hai was scolded until he couldn't say anything. Tai Tan looked around. "I don't sense any other emperor's auras. Just because you can't sense them doesn't mean they don't exist. Yi Zichen is the Emperor's star. Shuiyang and the others are determined to follow him. Do you think they can just abandon him? Then, Your Excellency, what do you think we should do? This girl must have condensed a Tao heart of wind. This wind is too fierce." Over a dozen tornadoes surrounded Kuei Lin and the others. The powerful wind caused cracks to appear in the barrier they'd formed. The Demon Emperor hadn't given the order to attack, so they could only pour their spiritual energy into the barrier and stabilize it. Yi Zichen was dumbfounded. He'd never guessed the little girl could explode with such power. Given Yi Zichen's attainments in the Tao of Wind, he could summon tornadoes as well. However, the tornadoes he had created paled in comparison to the tornadoes in front of him. Just look at the cracks the tornadoes left behind. Given enough time, they could crush the entire mountain range. Looking up into the void, Gu Luolin was the Wind Lady who controlled the wind. There was an unprecedented seriousness on her young face as she stared at the Demon Emperor and the others within the enchantment. Storm. Boom. 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 Everyone heard the sound of explosions. It was as if space itself had exploded, and the surrounding tornadoes exploded. "Star-Lord Yi, do you really want to make an enemy out of us?" Blindly backing down wasn't Kuei Lin's style at all. Furthermore, he'd looked around carefully, but he really hadn't sensed any Emperor's aura. Before shedding all pretense of cordiality, he decided to ask Yi Zichen one last time. Of course, this was his ultimatum to Yi Zichen. Of course I don't want to make an enemy out of you. All of your cultivations are so high, and I don't have any helpers by my side. I can't beat you even if I tried, said Yi Zichen. Then, I can't control her. Besides, I don't know her that well. In that case, let's just treat this as a personal grudge between us. Star Lord Yi, please don't interfere. Just because he couldn't sense it didn't mean it didn't exist. Kuei Lin was still worried that an emperor had set up an ambush, so he didn't want to cause any more trouble with Yi Zichen. Who would have thought? If you dare ignore me, I'll tell your mother. Gu Luolin furrowed her petite face in anger. When Yi Zichen heard that, his expression darkened. He shrugged and said, I don't want to, but she'll tell my mother. I fear my mother more than anything. Then don't blame me for being impolite. In an instant, the void was suddenly dyed with a layer of ink. An invisible domain enveloped Yi Zichen and Gu Luolin. As far as the eye could see, the surrounding space was a purplish red. This was the Demon Emperor's domain. The howling tornado instantly shattered the domain. The wind stopped howling, only to be replaced by shrill, mournful wails. Iron Tan, go deal with Yi Zichen. Remember, don't injure him too badly. Before I transcend, I can't afford to cause too much trouble with Shui Yang and the others, shouted the Demon Emperor. Iron Tan looked reluctant. No matter how he looked at it, fighting Yi Zichen was a difficult task. They couldn't injure him. They were all Imperial Lords. If they faced a ruler, the slightest bit of carelessness could shatter their souls. They couldn't injure him, and they couldn't let him injure them. Why did such a difficult task have to fall to him? Iron Tan reluctantly landed in front of Yi Zichen. Kuei Lin, who'd broken through Gu Luolin's gale, led Jiao Hai and the Demon Clan head to meet Gu Luolin. Big Condor moved to help, but to his surprise, Big White, go help my nephew. Gu Luolin turned to Big White, who'd recovered somewhat. Even if they were 800 times more courageous, they wouldn't dare touch me. Big White stopped midway, his eyes flashing with confusion. When the Demon Emperor heard this, he laughed. They wouldn't dare touch you, little girl. Do you know who you're talking to? Kuei Lin's eyes flashed with disdain. He couldn't touch Yi Zichen because he feared the other Imperial Lords. If he could obtain the method to transcend, he wouldn't even care about Yi Zichen. Yet this little girl said he wouldn't dare touch her? Kuei Lin felt like he'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. Could it be that you're afraid? Has your previous domineering aura disappeared? But I'm no saint. I won't go easy on you just because you're a little girl. Afraid? You really know how to joke. Me? Afraid? You should be the ones who are afraid. Gu Luolin chuckled, her delicate chin lifting slightly. Chapter 1656. Who dares touch me? Gu Luolin's questions continued to echo throughout the mountain range. However, her arrogant words caused the Demon Emperor and the others to have grave looks flash across their faces. The Gu family. To ordinary cultivators, the sacred land was far more famous than the Gu family. Or rather, they didn't even know of the Gu family's existence. If you pulled a random ruler off the street and told them you were from the Gu family, they wouldn't even bother with you. But to those above the ruler level, the Gu family was an existence they could only look up to. No one above the ruler level would dare say they didn't know of the Gu family. Although the Gu family didn't occupy any of the Divine Mountains, no one could ignore them. That was because they had 3 half-step transcendence cultivators. Above the ruler level were the monarchs, emperors, and sovereigns. These were all specific classifications for sovereigns. In the end, they were limited to sovereigns. Half-step transcendence cultivators were different. They were completely above the ruler level. Even if they only took half a step, they weren't bound by the majority of the laws. With 3 half-step transcendence cultivators, The Gu family was a transcendent existence among the god, Yao, and demon races. The Gu family didn't live on any of the divine mountains. Instead, they lived in a separate space carved out by the three half-step transcendence cultivators. Here, the Gu family was free from the laws. Whether it was their comprehension of the Tao or their cultivation, no one could match them. As a result, everyone in the Gu family, from the direct descendants to the servants, anyone placed in the god, Yao, and demon races would be considered top-notch experts. After becoming a ruler, one had to pay respects to the Gu family. This wasn't a rule set by the Gu family, but for rulers and above, it was the most important mission they had to complete. It was all for the sake of not provoking the members of the Gu family, even the servants of the Gu family. The king of the southern kingdom, Jiao Hai, and the leader of the demon race were at a loss. Gu Shan, Gu Xuanda, and Qingli were the three half-step transcendence realm experts of the Gu family. The little lowly in front of them was the youngest daughter of the Gu family. She was their descendant. The moment this identity was revealed, they no longer had any intentions of being enemies. Should I be afraid or should you be? Gu Luolin narrowed her eyes at Kuei Lin, Jiao Hai, and Qiu Guang. Devil Emperor Kuei Lin, King Jiao Hai of the Southern Empire, and Patriarch Qiu Guang of the Horned Demon race, do any of you dare touch a single hair on my head? As long as you dare, you should know the consequences best, right? What's going on? Yi Zichen didn't expect Gu Luolin to scare the Demon Emperor and company to that extent with just a few words. He didn't know much about the Gu family, but even if he didn't, he could tell something from their expressions. Even Iron Tank, who was in front of Yi Zichen, had a hint of fear in his eyes when he looked towards Gu Luolin. It seemed that Gu Luolin was the real second generation. After mentioning a few names, the Demon Emperor and the others didn't even dare to move. Previously, Yi Zichen had thought himself pretty fierce. His mother was the Lord of 7 Stars, and his aunt was the head of the Profound Pavilion. Compared to Gu Luolin, it seemed there really wasn't much of a difference. Little did he know that he had forgotten that if he recognized the Gu family, he would also be a member of the Gu family. Demon Emperor. Jiao Hai licked his lips. From the looks of it, he no longer wanted to fight with this grandaunt. He was really frightened. It wasn't that he was cowardly, but who wouldn't be afraid of a grandaunt like her? If he really hurt her, then the Gu family would be so furious that they could destroy his entire country. What's more, the southern country didn't have a good relationship with the Yao Emperor. Even if the Gu family came, the Yao Emperor might not stop them. More importantly, this grandaunt was Gu Xuanda and Qingli's daughter. She was the daughter of 2 half-step transcendence experts. Would he dare hurt her? He really wouldn't. Qiu Guang's expression was no different from Jiao Hai's. No clan could endure the Gu family's revenge. Come on, hit me if you can. Do you dare to hit me? Gu Luolin landed directly in front of the Demon Emperor and company and scooted closer to them. Come. Try hitting me. Let me tell you, my father left me a jade slip. If you dare touch me, I'll crush it. If you do, my father will come right over. Don't think that my father can't enter this lousy mausoleum. My father told me to come here because he was fully prepared. If you don't believe me, then come and try. Gu Luolin's glaring was the epitome of a spoiled brat. Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang were too embarrassed to respond, and even Kuei Lin clenched his fist. Aggrieved. This was so King aggrieved. A mighty demon emperor should have been able to sweep through the mausoleum, but he just had to run into these 2 ancestors. If it was Yi Zichen, he'd be fine. If he really fought the Ocean Emperor, he wouldn't be afraid. But then he had to run into the Gu family's ancestor. What was going on? Could it be that even ancestors were attracted to each other? How did these 2 people end up together for no reason? Your Excellency, I think we should retreat, transmitted Jiao Hai. This grandaunt is most likely the daughter of the Gu family's 2 half-step transcendence experts. Although we've met before, it's better to be safe than sorry. If it's true, then the Gu family won't be able to play with us. That's right, Demon Emperor. Let's not bother with them. Besides, there's still Yizichin. If the Ocean Emperor and the others come, we'll be in trouble. We came here in search of transcendence and good fortune. If we can't endure a little, our plans will be ruined. Demon Emperor, please think of the bigger picture, said Qiu Guang. Although they said they should think of the bigger picture, Kuei Lin could tell that they were afraid. They couldn't bear the Gu family's wrath, so they didn't dare cause trouble for them. In truth, this wasn't their fault. Even Kuei Lin was afraid of the Gu family. He'd been to the Gu family before. Even though he was a demon emperor, he couldn't compare to the Gu family at all. He'd had to pay respects to them. He'd also witnessed the Gu family's true strength. Emperors were at the level of the Gu family's servants. Anyone with even the slightest connection to the Gu family was at least an imperial emperor. It could be said that the Gu family was led by 3 transcendence experts. They were a faction of emperor-level experts. Fortunately, the Gu family had an agreement with the laws and couldn't casually appear in the world. If they did, the god Yao and demon realms would have long since fallen under their rule. Kuei Lin didn't dare provoke such a faction. You guys, don't play dumb with me. What happened to your earlier power? How did you lose the ability to hurt Big Whitey? Come on, if you can, hit me a few times. Hit me the same way you hit Big Whitey. Why can't I submit to you? Hit me. Come on. Gu Luolin glared at them and cursed. Even more infuriating, she grabbed Jiao Hai's hand and slapped it against her face. Chapter 1657. Gu Luolin's arrogance was a stark contrast to the Demon Emperor and company's silence. Yizichin couldn't tell what the Demon Emperor was thinking, but Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang could tell from their words that their fear was ingrained into their bones. The young lady of the Gu family's main line of descent, the beloved daughter of 2 half-step transcendents. Even if they ate a bear's heart or a leopard's gall, they really wouldn't dare to touch a single hair of hers. What they got in return was not peace, but Gu Luolin's relentless pressure. Her words of kneeling and apologizing caused the Demon Emperor and company's faces to turn green. The Demon Emperor, Jiao Hai, and Qiu Guang were all respected figures in the God, Yao, and demon races. Kneeling and apologizing to a ferocious beast was the same as stepping on their heads and trampling on their dignity. Yizichin glanced at Iron Tan, who had a pipe in his mouth. From his expression, he didn't seem to have any intention of fighting. Thus, Yizichin decided to ignore him and looked at Gu Luolin and the Demon Emperor with interest. Obviously, in terms of fun, their place was more interesting. The Demon Emperor, Jiao Hai, and Qiu Guang kneeling and apologizing was a rare sight. Miss Gu, we have offended you before. This divine artifact armor is ranked in the top 100 of the divine artifact rankings. This string of beads is also a divine artifact in the top 100 of the divine artifact rankings. It has the effect of calming the mind. After a long silence, Jiao Hai walked in front of Gu Luolin with the set of armor and beads. Take it as Jiao Hai apologizing to you. Please accept it. Qiu Guang cursed in his heart. Jiao Hai is so cunning. Kneeling and apologizing would hurt their dignity. Since they didn't dare to provoke her, the best way to resolve this was naturally to compensate her. Miss Gu, this is a set of wings. They are pure white and transparent, perfect for you to wear. Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang carefully held the treasures in their hands. They were filled with hope that Gu Luolin would accept their gift. Gu Luolin also walked over with a smile, while Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang smiled apologetically. Gu Luolin swung her hand and knocked the treasures in their hands onto the ground. Her young and tender little face was filled with disdain. Who do you think I am? You want to use these pieces of trash to settle things? You're thinking too simply. All of a sudden, Yizichin felt a surge of air in his chest, causing him to cough a few times. Look at him. The treasures taken out by Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang were obviously supreme treasures, but they were trash to Gu Luolin. Poverty truly limited one's imagination. To be honest, if Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang apologized to Yi Zichen with this, he would have accepted the treasures a long time ago. In any case, he wasn't injured, so getting these treasures for free was actually quite profitable. Of course, Gu Luolin was merely seeking justice for the Great Condor. Yi Zichen wasn't that close to the Great Condor, so he didn't know what sort of position the Great Condor held in Gu Luolin's heart. If Yang Jian or the Great Sage were the ones injured, Yi Zichen probably wouldn't have agreed either. Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang's faces turned ugly when their supreme treasures were knocked out of their hands. The unsightly expressions on their faces were not because of resentment, but because of an even stronger fear that shrouded their hearts. Would they dare to have a grudge against Miss Gu? You want to bribe me with a set of lousy armor, a lousy magic bead, and a lousy pair of wings? Please think carefully about who I am. I'll tell you one more time. My name is Gu Luolin, my father is Gu Xuanda, and my mother is Qingli. Even if you treat these treasures as servants of the Gu family, I don't care about them at all. I don't even care about the maidservants, yet you want to give me this trash? Are you trying to disgust me? Or do you really think that the Gu family is just that, and that you can just give us trash? As soon as Gu Luolin finished speaking, Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang knelt onto the ground. Miss Gu, we have no intention of looking down on the Gu family. No matter what, the Gu family has always been a transcendent existence. They knelt. In the end, Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang still knelt on the ground. Gu Luolin smirked, then kicked their shoulders a few times. Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang didn't dare take even half a step back. Although both of them gave me trash, at least they had the heart to do so. What do you think you are? You're just standing there like a statue. I told you to kneel. Do you not understand what I'm saying? Suddenly, Gu Luolin's gaze landed on Kuei Lin. As far as Yi Zichen could remember, Gu Luolin was the first person to dare speak to Kuei Lin like this. When Jiao Hai and Qiu Guang heard such aggressive and provocative words, they could only silently mourn for Kuei Lin. However, they didn't even dare look him in the eye. Kneeling and begging for mercy had already caused them to lose all face. If they met Kuei Lin's gaze, they might as well find a rock and smash their heads against it. Kuei Lin clenched his fists tightly within his sleeve. He really had the urge to strangle this little girl who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth and was only relying on her family background to vent the hatred in his heart. However, he didn't dare take the risk. Half-step transcendence, even if it was only half a step, was still a height he couldn't hope to reach. If Gu Luolin crushed the jade slip his father had left him the moment he attacked, then he'd be nothing more than a chicken or a stray dog. He wouldn't even have a chance to resist before he was obliterated. 10,000 years of cultivation would be destroyed in a single day. Kneel. It was also impossible for him to do so. No matter what, he was the emperor of the demon race. Even if Gu Luolin was a direct descendant of the Gu family, he had to maintain his dignity. If he knelt and begged for mercy, that would mean the Gu family had trampled over the entire demon race. What are you doing? You're clenching your fists under your sleeves. Do you want to attack me? Gu Luolin didn't fear Kuei Lin's attack at all. She lifted her head and walked right in front of him, her eyelids drooping as she snorted. If you're angry, don't hold it in. It'll be bad if you get sick from holding it in. If you want to attack me, do it now. That is, if you're not afraid my father will annihilate your entire family. As she spoke, a crystalline jade slip appeared in Gu Luolin's hands. She fiddled with it. When they saw it, Jiao Hai, Qiu Guang, and the demon emperor's pupils constricted. They hadn't expected Gu Luolin to be serious. She really did have Gu Xuanda's jade slip. Come on, hit me. Come on, hit me. Gu Luolin inched closer and closer to Kuei Lin, her hands clenching the jade slip. You'd best kill me now. Of course, even if you do, I'll crush the slip and my father will rush over. What's more, your entire demon race will be buried with him. Miss Gu, you really know how to joke. Don't you know full well whether or not I'm telling the truth? Gu Luolin jabbed Kuei Lin in the chest a few times. Jiao Hai, Qiuguang, and the others could sense the change in Kuei Lin's aura. They were terrified he'd really attacked Gu Luolin in a fit of rage and dragged them down with him. Demon Emperor, that's the young lady of the Gu family. Demon Emperor, endure it. Don't use violence on her. If you can't handle it, just apologize. Several transmissions exploded in the Demon Emperor's sea of consciousness. Gu Luolin's words merely infuriated Kuei Lin, but their cowardice infuriated him to the point of trembling. Kuei Lin regretted teaming up with them. He'd thought his allies were all elites with vast resources and connections in the three realms. Given their strength, they wouldn't be much weaker than Yi Zichen's alliance. And yet, they'd been so frightened by a direct descendant of the Gu family. Even if the Gu family was transcendent with their cowardice, how could they possibly accomplish anything great? Even if they obtained Transcendence's good fortune, if the Gu family scared them into submission, they'd have no choice but to obediently hand it over. Shut up, you bunch of trash! Kuei Lin cursed, not even using his divine sense to communicate. Gu Luolin was clearly startled. Her hands trembled, and she pursed her lips as if she were about to cry. Yi Zichen hurried over and patted her on the shoulder. Kuei Lin's expression shifted as he looked at Yi Zichen and Gu Luolin. Miss Gu, Star Lord Yi, I, Kuei Lin, admit defeat this time. I, Kuei Lin, don't want the treasures here anymore. But don't think you've won anything. The mountains never change, and the rivers never stop flowing. We'll meet again. Kuei Lin cupped his hands in respect, then transformed into a cloud of demonic energy that merged with heaven and earth. As for his subordinates, he'd left them behind. Jiao Hai, Qiuguang, and Tai Tan looked at each other in bewilderment. They hadn't expected Kuei Lin to be so disloyal. He'd abandon them just like that. Big White, let's go after him. Screech! Big Condor wanted to chase after them, but Yi Zichen pulled Gu Luolin back. What are you chasing for? Do you know where he went? Just go after him. Besides, he's a demon emperor. He needs to save face. He scared me half to death just now. Let him run. When I get back, I'll tell my parents. Gu Luolin pouted pitifully. At the end of the day, Gu Luolin was still a child. Yi Zichen patted her on the head, then glanced at Tai Tan, who didn't know what to do. What are you just standing there for? Get on your knees and apologize to Big Condor. Are you sure you want to run with Kuei Lin? Tai Tan wanted to run, but when he remembered that Gu Luolin was watching, he didn't dare. He gnashed his teeth and walked up to Gu Luolin and Yi Zichen. When he saw his comrades kneeling on the ground, he thought about it for a moment and knelt as well. Miss Gu, Star Lord Yi, I apologize for my offense. What kind of brains do you have? Didn't Gu Luolin tell you to apologize to Big Condor? Said Yi Zichen speechlessly. Who told you to call me by my name? You're my nephew, shouted Gu Luolin. Fine, fine, fine. You're the boss, you're the boss. Yi Zichen looked helpless, but the kneeling subordinates' hearts were in turmoil. Yi Zichen's identity as the Star Lord alone was already difficult enough to deal with. From what Gu Luolin said, he was also a member of the Gu family. Then they recalled Yi Zichen's surname. If they looked at Yi the other way around, wouldn't that make him Gu? Jiao Hai and the others couldn't help but gulp. They really hoped that their worries were unnecessary. Yi Zichen's surname was Yi, and he had nothing to do with the Gu family. Chapter 1658. No matter how shocked Jiao Hai and the others were, Yi Zichen's background wasn't their main concern. Should they kneel and apologize to the Great Condor? It was impossible to say they didn't resist. What kind of status did they have? If word got out that they knelt and apologized to a beast, how would they face their clansmen? But since they'd already knelt, apologizing to a beast wasn't all that different. If they didn't apologize, would Gu Luolin let them go? Great White! The eagle approached, wings drooping. Although Yi Zichen had given it some pills, they were vastly different in size from humans. The pills weren't particularly effective on it. Its wounds had healed slightly, but they weren't completely healed. When she saw the bloody holes in its wings, Gu Luolin clenched her fists. Her hatred for Kuei Lin only deepened. It was fair to say that Gu Luolin had been saved twice since entering the mausoleum. Her clansmen had tried to eat her, and the eagle had helped her search for an antidote when she'd nearly died from poison. Whether it was because she owed it her life, or because they'd become like old friends at first sight, Kuei Lin had injured her so grievously. The way Gu Luolin saw it, there was no way she'd just let it go. If she'd known something like this would happen, she would have listened to her parents and focused on cultivation. If she'd listened to her parents, Kuei Lin wouldn't have been able to leave so easily. These were Kuei Lin's dogs, and they could be considered interest from him. As for her grudge with him, she could settle it later. Gu Luolin buried her hatred deep in her heart, then looked at Jiao Hai and the others. Apologize. Jiao Hai and the others shuddered when they heard this childish shout. It was impossible for them to escape from apologizing to this ferocious beast. In order to survive and for Gu Luolin to let them go and not cause trouble for them after they got out, the only thing they could do was to lower their prideful heads. Sorry. Is that the attitude of an apology? Kowtow and apologize, shouted Gu Luolin. Sorry. Jiao Hai and the others really did bury their heads in the ground. The eagle blinked like a human, then gently flapped its uninjured wings. Gu Luolin looked at the eagle. Are you going to let them go? Tisk. The big eagle nodded gently, but Gu Luolin still gave them a few vicious kicks. Scram, scram as far as you can. Don't let me see you again. Jiao Hai and the others felt as if they had been pardoned. They fled in panic. They did not even dare to retrieve the god artifacts that were scattered on the ground. They only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Obviously, Gu Luolin had not vented her anger yet. She snorted as she watched them leave. They really got off easy. They even let that demon emperor escape. Humph, don't think that it's all right for him to leave. The monk can run, but the temple can't. I'll find him sooner or later. Don't be too angry. Kuei Lin ran away, so what? But I have plenty of ways to make sure he can't even raise his head once he's out of here. You have a way? Gu Luolin raised her eyebrows. Yi Zichen chuckled. He waited until he could no longer see Jiao Hai and the others before pressing the button to stop filming. Yi Zichen watched the video he took with interest, then put his phone away. When we get out of here, I will definitely give our Lord Demon Emperor a generous gift. Ever since Kuei Lin and the others left, no more outsiders invaded the eagle's territory. However, even if it was just the Demon Emperor and the others, they still managed to inflict heavy losses on the eagle's clansmen. Yi Zichen and Gu Luolin worked together to dig several large pits in the valley, and buried the corpses of the birds there, allowing them to rest in peace. The eagle was in low spirits. His clansmen had followed him for far too long. It had seen many of its clansmen grow up. Looking at the stiff bodies of these clansmen buried in the canyon, the rims of its eyes were filled with tears. It was just as Kuei Lin had said. The eagle and the others had been guarding a supreme treasure. Perhaps it was to repay a debt of gratitude, or perhaps it was out of respect for Gu Luolin, but the eagle took the treasure out of his mouth. This supreme treasure was a pure gold crown. The crown had a total of 5 protrusions, and each of the protrusions had a sparkling and translucent jewel. If he wasn't mistaken, the 5 gems seemed to correspond to the 5 elements: wind, fire, rain, thunder, and lightning. The reason Yi Zichen felt this way was because when he put it on, he felt his affinity with the 5 elements increase considerably, and his comprehension of them deepened. His fire and lightning elements also felt as if they were on the verge of breaking through to the peak. Gu Luolin didn't like the crown style. She found it too ostentatious, but she really liked the translucent gems. At first glance, she had her eyes on these 5 gems and wanted to remove them from the top. Unfortunately, the gems were one with the crown, so Gu Luolin could only stare, unable to remove them. In the end, because the crown was too ostentatious, Gu Luolin rejected it and gave it to Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen was naturally overjoyed to receive a supreme treasure for no apparent reason, but he also felt ashamed to accept it. When they'd fought the Demon Emperor and the others, Gu Luolin's performance had scared them off. Yi Zichen had merely been a spectator and hadn't done anything at all. The eagle took out the crown. From the looks of it, it wanted to give it to Gu Luolin as well. However, Gu Luolin was generous. Seeing Yi Zichen's hesitation, she patted him on the shoulder like an elder. "Just think of it as a greeting gift to my nephew." The eagle didn't say anything. Yi Zichen's eyebrows twitched, but he didn't retort. No matter how he looked at it, it wasn't a loss for a junior to receive such a supreme treasure. What's more, this supreme treasure was intimately connected to the Tao of the Five Elements. If he could keep wearing the crown, he might be able to condense his Tao heart in the shortest amount of time possible. If he could condense his Tao heart before the end, whether it was for his personal safety or the survival of the three-legged races, it would be a good thing. Yi Zichen spent the next few days in the eagle's territory, comprehending the Tao of the Five Elements with the crown on his head. He didn't rush to the palace. He knew full well that with his current strength, forget the Demon Emperor, he wouldn't even be a match for an ordinary emperor. Coincidentally, after putting on the crown, his fire and lightning elements both showed signs of breaking through, so he decided to break through here first. Then he headed. There was no day or night in the mausoleum. Snow fell from the snowy mountains. Why is the sky so dark? The snowy skies of the everlasting snow mountains were suddenly covered by inky black clouds. The black clouds blotted out the sun, casting the entire snowy mountain range into darkness. The inky clouds carried a heavy, oppressive aura. Quite a few vicious beasts burrowed into their caves, not daring to peek their heads out. The experts who were still rushing about in the snowy mountains in search of transcendence were also looking at the sky with grave expressions. The spiritual energy in their bodies surged, and they set up a barrier in advance. No one knew how this ink-colored cloud appeared, and they had to be cautious in dealing with this strange phenomenon. The birds in the eagle's territory returned to their nest. The inky clouds grew darker and darker. In less than an hour, the entire snowy mountain range was so dark you couldn't even see your own fingers in front of you. A streak of blood-red lightning flashed through the sky. This brief flash of light caused the vicious beasts and cultivators to raise their vigilance to the max. The darker it was, the more dangerous it was. The snowy mountains were in a unique situation. Even an imperial monarch expert's spiritual sense couldn't extend more than a kilometer. In the eyes of these experts, this might be a barrier set up by the Transcendence Mausoleum for them. Any opportunity was proportional to the danger. The Transcendence Mausoleum wouldn't let them keep searching for treasures and opportunities. It was very likely that the inky clouds covering the sun were the first wave of attacks from the Transcendence Mausoleum. Another bolt of lightning flashed. In this pitch-black environment, this bolt of lightning revealed endless strangeness. No one dared to move recklessly. Those who were in the same group as them would gather around each other. Crackle! Suddenly, a bolt of heavenly lightning several meters wide fell from the sky. After that, the entire mountain range turned into a pool of lightning. Countless bolts of heavenly lightning rained down. The entire snowy mountain range rumbled, and the pitch-black mountain range was illuminated by the lightning. The lightning landed and shattered boulders. In this pitch-black environment, the people who didn't dare to move could only support the barrier. However, the lightning and heavenly lightning were like appetizers, fire. Fire. Blinding fire. When they looked up, they saw flames falling from the sky like meteors. When the flames landed on the ground, they instantly lit up the pitch-black world. The flames burned fiercely, and the heat caused the snow and ice on the mountain range to melt. Even the boulders of the mountain range were scorched to smithereens by the heat. This is a Tao technique. When the flames fell to the ground, someone finally recognized the true nature of the flames, lightning, and thunder. This wasn't a barrier set up by the mausoleum. It was someone who had achieved a breakthrough in their understanding of Tao technique. As for who that person was? Lightning, thunder, heavenly fire, this was clearly someone who had comprehended the 5 elements. Of the people who entered the mausoleum, the only one who had comprehended the 5 elements was Yizi. It's Yizi. Yang Jian yelled beside a fire. Yizi didn't die. I told you long ago that Yizichen was still alive, but some people didn't believe me, Gu Li snorted, but he was actually rather shocked. The power of fire, thunder, and lightning. Yizichen's mastery of these elements was at the very least complete. That auspicious rain from before had probably been caused by Yizichen as well. This meant that he'd already reached the peak of 4 elements. He was only one step away from condensing the Tao heart of the 5 elements. The Emperor's star truly is the chosen of the heavens, muttered the Ocean Emperor as she watched the heavenly fire and lightning. There really is a supreme treasure hidden there. Chapter 1659. The Eagle's Territory. Yizichen sat cross-legged on the ground. Waves of heat melted the ice and snow around him. Raging flames burned around him. From where he stood, he couldn't see any vicious beasts at all. The flying beasts were gathered together, and the eagle stood by their sides, trying to calm them down. From time to time, it glanced at Gu Luolin, as if asking how long it would take for Yizichen to disperse the flames. Time was fleeting like a white steed flitting past a crack. No one knew how long the baptism of heavenly fire and lightning lasted. Only Yizichen, who was immersed in comprehending the Tao, could clearly sense his understanding of the 5 elements growing clearer and clearer. Suddenly Yizichen, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes. His eyes were actually emitting tangible flames. His eyes that were burning with raging flames were able to make his vision unobstructed in the pitch-black darkness. I never would have guessed that complete mastery of fire would improve my fiery eyes of truth as well. Yizichen couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. The great sage's fiery eyes had been refined by old Lord Taishang after all. If he wanted to improve his fiery eyes of truth any further, he'd need an inferno. Then Yizichen noticed the condors and the others gathered together in the distance. When he saw their timid expressions, Yizichen took advantage of the opportunity to disperse his flames and lightning. In the blink of an eye, the snowy mountain range returned to its former brightness. Squeak! 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 The flying beasts cried out. The eagle stood in front of the other flying beasts and shouted a few times. The other flying beasts returned to their duties, but before they left, they kept glancing at Yizichen. Afterwards, Gu Luolin and the eagle flew through the sky and landed in front of Yizichen. Not bad. You've improved your Tao to such an extent in such a short time. Gu Luolin commented like an elder, but at the same time, she reached out and patted Yizichen on the shoulder in apparent comfort. Unfortunately, there was a difference in height, so when she patted Yizichen's shoulder, Gu Luolin tiptoed cutely. He took out his phone and looked at the time. Yizichen hadn't expected to reach complete mastery of his fire, lightning, and lightning elements in less than 3 days. Yizichen was a bit stunned by this terrifying development. He gently removed the crown from his head. Yizichen stared at it for a long time. This crown was truly a peerless treasure. It was as if it was tailor-made for him. If it weren't for the fact that he still had the opportunity to transcend, and that he had too many competitors around him, he might have taken the opportunity to fully comprehend the wind element and condense his Tao heart. But it was strange, if one cultivated any one of the 5-element Tao arts alone, then one would condense a Tao heart upon attaining perfection. Back when Yizichen's Tao heart had reached the peak of the rain element, it hadn't appeared. He had yet to condense his Tao heart for the fire, lightning, and lightning elements. From the looks of it, the Tao of the 5 elements needs to be perfected in order to condense a Tao heart. Yizichen muttered to himself, then gently brushed the air. Of the 5 elements of the Tao of the 5 elements in the world, besides the wind element, all the other elements were extremely close to him. The moment he stretched out his hand, he could feel the surrounding elements cheering and leaping towards him. This meant that in the future, he'd be able to use these elements with even greater ease. In truth, after waking up, Yi Zichen still felt like he'd taken a wrong turn. He looked up at the palace at the top of the mountain. If he could fly, then reaching the palace would be much easier. But if he couldn't, then he'd have to walk a mountain path. When he was comprehending Taoist techniques, he should have comprehended the wind element to perfection and condensed his wings. But after thinking about it, he gave up. Epiphanies and opportunities were hard to come by. Just now, he'd clearly gained a deeper understanding of the fire, lightning, and lightning element. If he spent too much time comprehending the wind element in order to condense his wings and head to the palace, he'd give up on the easier elements. That would be putting the cart before the horse. Although he hadn't condensed his wind element wings, Yi Zichen was satisfied that he'd reached perfection in the other 3 elements. However, his only regret was that his understanding of the Tao of heaven and earth had improved by leaps and bounds. Unfortunately, he was still at the sovereign level, and his domain hadn't expanded much either. Based on his current strength, he was roughly at the divine general level. Hey, stop immersing yourself in it. Gu Luolin couldn't help but purse her lips when she saw Yi Zichen staring at his palm. I couldn't help myself. Yi Zichen smiled and retracted his hand, then cupped his hands sincerely towards Gu Luolin. This progress is all thanks to Miss Gu's reluctance to part with your treasures. Don't mention it. You're my nephew. As a senior, it's only natural for me to take care of my juniors. Yi Zichen's expression darkened. Being called nephew by a little girl like her felt awkward no matter how you looked at it. Yi Zichen didn't dwell too much on the topic of seniority. He knew that if he tried to emphasize it, they'd start a never-ending argument. Seeing that she was young, Yi Zichen decided to let her have her way out of kindness. She felt like she was his senior, but Yi Zichen definitely wouldn't admit it. Have there been any intruders recently? Asked Yi Zichen. Intruder, what nonsense are you spouting? Said Gu Luolin disdainfully. You have no idea how big of a ruckus you've caused. The sky is filled with lightning and fire. It's pitch black. Who would dare move? Intruders? I'm afraid those who entered the mountains would tremble in fear if they saw what you've done. Yi Zichen smiled wryly. He naturally didn't know what had happened while he was comprehending the Tao. It was just like when he was comprehending the Tao of rain. He couldn't control the auspicious rain at all. He'd been performing simulations in his sea of consciousness, but the auspicious rain had appeared on its own in the outside world. It was obvious that the lightning and fire Gu Luolin spoke of had fallen while he was comprehending the Tao. It's not bad if there aren't any intruders. Eagle's clansmen have suffered heavy casualties. Many of them have yet to recover from their injuries. If an intruder comes now. So what if they come? Gu Luolin put her hands on her hips in disdain. Yi Zichen instantly swallowed the rest of his words. She was right. So what if an intruder came? With an ancestor like her around, even Kuei Lin didn't dare breathe too loudly. He didn't even dare talk back. He'd just run away. If anyone else came, they'd probably be so frightened they wouldn't even be able to stand. There's nothing we can do. With you here, who would dare cause trouble? Laughed Yi Zichen. Humph. When Gu Luolin heard this, she raised her head arrogantly. However, she was actually quite unhappy in her heart. Although she was young, she knew that those people were afraid of her. In truth, they were afraid of her parents and grandfather. Without their protection, the people here wouldn't even put her in their eyes. Ever since she was young, she'd been protected by the 3 half-step transcendental elders of her clan. She'd always hoped to rely on herself to make others treat her differently. That was why she was so eager to grow up. Whenever she met Yi Zichen, she'd always emphasized that she was his elder. All of this was a symbol of her desire for independence. The atmosphere suddenly froze. Gu Luolin thought about what to do after she grew up, while Yi Zichen pondered how to get Gu Luolin or the eagle to send him to the palace. At the end of the day, Yi Zichen felt that the greatest opportunity was hidden in the palace. The two of them didn't speak. Silence enveloped the area, and the howling winds of the mountain range rang clearly in their ears. From what I saw just now, it seems like you've comprehended lightning, fire, and lightning to perfection, said Gu Luolin suddenly. That's right. Then does that mean you comprehended the great Tao of the 5 elements? Yi Zichen nodded again. Not bad. Gu Luolin smacked Yi Zichen's shoulder. Ever since the 5 elements' great emperor died, there haven't been many people who've dared walk the great Tao of the 5 elements. You're so young, yet you've already comprehended 3 elements to perfection. No wonder you're my nephew. Nephew? Ah, that's right, nephew. Also, I comprehended 4 elements. My rain element is perfect as well. Isn't that even better? No wonder you're my nephew. Nephew? Yi Zichen didn't know why he corrected Gu Luolin's way of addressing him as nephew. It was as if he had truly admitted that he was her junior. Actually, Yi Zichen didn't admit it. It was purely because Gu Luolin was an idiot when it came to relationships between family. Yi Zichen felt very uncomfortable, so he couldn't help but correct her. All of a sudden, the atmosphere turned cold once again. Actually, Yi Zichen and Gu Luolin's conversation just now was just an awkward conversation. His mind wasn't even there. After he woke up, his mind had already flown over to the palace. It was clear that he wouldn't make it in time to hurry down the mountain to the palace. The others had already advanced a great deal towards the palace while he was comprehending the Tao. If he went down the mountain to the palace now, he would encounter ferocious beasts on the way, which would waste quite a bit of time. By the time he got there, the fortune in the palace might have already been taken by someone else. The only way to reverse the process was to fly over, and the only ones who could do that were Big Condor and Gu Luolin. Yi Zichen glanced over at Gu Luolin, but didn't know what to say. Do you want me and Big Condor to give you a ride? Gu Luolin shook her head mischievously, then ran in front of Yi Zichen with a chuckle. You could tell you've been looking towards the palace from the start. Even an idiot can tell. Gu Luolin glared at him. Gu Luolin glared at him and said, If you have something to say, just say it. When you were comprehending the Tao, I told Big Condor to bring you over, and Big Condor agreed. But you kept saying yes? Nope, you don't seem to be in a hurry, so I just told you. How am I not in a hurry? I'm in a hurry! Yi Zichen shouted urgently. Chapter 1660. In the sky above the snowy mountains, the ferocious beast tyrant, Great Eagle, soared in the sky, while Gu Luolin sat on its back. As for Yi Zichen, hey, I don't have human rights. Why do I have to be caught? Yi Zichen shouted with his eyes wide open. However, the wind above the clouds was too strong, causing him to take in a few mouthfuls of air, causing his words to be muffled. He didn't expect Gu Luolin, who was sitting in sorrow, to actually hear him. She didn't want to be blown by the wind like an idiot, so she sent a divine sense transmission. It's your fault for wanting to use Great Eagle as a mount. Yi Zichen had indeed said something like that before he left. Since he only had one arm, he couldn't help but think of the classic period drama, The Condor Heroes, where Yang Guo and his eagle rode. Yi Zichen said it as if he was joking. He definitely had no intention of using Great Eagle as a mount. Don't say nonsense, I want to be brothers with Brother Eagle. You haven't watched The Condor Heroes, so don't misunderstand me, alright? Yi Zichen was speechless. Hurry up and tell Brother Eagle to put me up. The wind is too strong. If you leave me hanging like this, then I'll become dried meat before we even reach the palace. The wind in the sky was indeed much stronger than the wind in the mountains. Since Yi Zichen was a junior, Gu Luolin thought about it for a moment, then gave Big Eagle a signal, causing it to release its claws. When Yi Zichen let go of Great Eagle's claws, he truly felt the thrill of free fall. Fortunately, Great Eagle did a 360-degree flip in the air after letting go of him, and caught him firmly on its back. Isn't it exciting? Gu Luolin smiled evilly. Yi Zichen knew that it was definitely her idea when he saw her. Exciting. Too exciting. If it wasn't for the fact that his kidneys were good, he might have already lost control of his bladder. Yi Zichen didn't want to talk to Gu Luolin, so he sat to the side in a huff. Gu Luolin glanced at him, then silently moved to his side. Don't get angry, I was just joking with you. Don't forget, Great Eagle gave you a ride. If you get angry, then I'm going to tell Great Eagle to go back. Don't. Yi Zichen quickly admitted defeat and moved closer to Gu Luolin, since it really didn't feel good when someone grabbed his weak spot. The palace seemed very close, but it was actually quite a distance away from the eagle's territory. Through his phone, Yi Zichen knew that they had already been flying for an hour. Even so, the palace still gave them a vague feeling. Yi Zichen nudged Gu Luolin. What? Gu Luolin glanced at him. What on earth is your Gu family doing? Why are Kuei Lin and the others so afraid of you? It's as if the Gu family can eat them, said Yi Zichen. Forget Jiao Hai and the others, Kuei Lin was one of the 3 emperors, one of the highest positions in the 3 races. Even he didn't dare to do anything when he found out that Gu Luolin was a member of the Gu family. This caused Yi Zichen to doubt the Gu family's power. You speak as if you're not a member of the Gu family. Gu Luolin rolled her eyes at Yi Zichen. The Gu family is just a family. The internal pressure is so great that it can break people down. From the servants to the direct descendants, they are all in a competitive relationship. In the end, those who remain are all outstanding talent. As for the losers, they're all dead. When she said, the losers are all dead, there was a coldness in Gu Luolin's eyes that far exceeded her age. It was as if she, who was only a teenager, had already seen through life and death and was indifferent to this kind of life and death. The elimination system of survival of the fittest was actually the cruelest elimination system. What's more, not only did the family not stop it, they even supported it. This caused Yi Zichen to have a bad impression of the Gu family. Don't think that it's cruel. The Gu family is different from the other families. If the family wanted to forever intimidate the outside world, they had to maintain the most elite side of the family. As long as you go to the Gu clan, you will see that any servant girl is an emperor-level expert. Why did you do it? So that the others would know. The family does not dare to provoke the Gu family. Gu Luolin said indifferently. So you're saying that you stayed here after stepping over a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood? Yi Zichen gasped. I'm a direct descendant, okay? I'm different from the other clansmen. Gu Luolin rolled her eyes at Yi Zichen in annoyance. My dad is the head of the Gu family. How could he be like the other clansmen and servants? It's really different to have a good dad, Yi Zichen muttered. Seriously, all of you say that. All of a sudden, Gu Luolin's emotions sank. Yi Zichen had only said it casually, and didn't mean it on purpose. However, when he saw Gu Luolin's expression, it seemed like he minded it a lot. The clansmen say that about you as well? They don't dare. I'm the daughter of the first wife, and the only child of my dad and my mom. I'm the apple of my grandpa's eye. They don't dare to say something like that in front of me. They're afraid that I'll tell my dad and mom. My dad spoils me a lot, to the point of spoiling me. If I say something like that to him, then the person who said it would most likely be expelled from the family. Gu Luolin smiled wryly. Then you. They don't dare to say it in front of me, but they can say it in private. This isn't me guessing, I've heard it with my own ears. Gu Luolin laid on the back of the eagle and looked at the snowy sky. They say that I'm lucky because I'm the only daughter. With my dad and mom's guidance, I wander around aimlessly every day, but my cultivation level never dropped. They must have used heavenly treasures on me in secret. The other clansmen have to go through a family competition in order to obtain resources, but I can get resources without using them. They say that I'm special, and I might even be enlightened. Don't you think that's funny? Then, in reality? Yi Zichen raised his eyebrows. In reality? Gu Luolin glanced at Yi Zichen. In reality, it's because I'm talented, and I learn everything quickly. They cultivate for 16 hours, but I catch up to them in 2 hours. It's that simple. My dad and mom always tell me that if I can work as hard as my clansmen, I would have reached the Emperor realm a long time ago. Of course, I don't participate in the family competition because I'm afraid of hurting their pride. Yet, these people always have delusions of being persecuted. Seriously, I'm always too lazy to cultivate because I don't want to fall too far behind them. I put so much effort into it, yet they slander me behind my back. Don't you think I should get angry? To be honest, Yi Zichen's heart ached quite a bit when Gu Luolin said that earlier. No one would feel good when such a young child was talked about like that behind their backs. He thought that Gu Luolin would say that it was because she was the clan head's child that she actually put in more effort than normal people. What did she say? Talented. Others cultivate for 16 hours, but she caught up to them in 2 hours. If she cultivated properly, she would have already reached the Emperor realm. She didn't participate in the family competition because she didn't want to hurt their pride, eh? Yi Zichen was completely confused. This was the first time he had seen someone acting so cool in such a refreshing and refined manner. You don't believe me? Gu Luolin flipped around. Everything I said is true. If you don't believe me, then go back and ask your mom. Rong Rong is one of the few people in the clan that acknowledges me, and I like to share a lot of things with her. My mom went to the Gu household? Of course she did. Why haven't I heard Mom mention this before? Yi Zichen couldn't help but mutter. Logically speaking, he always caused trouble in the God realm, so Yi Rong should have lured him to the Gu clan. Yi Zichen didn't think too much about it and looked at Gu Luolin, who was troubled by his shocking talent. Since your dad loves you so much, how could he let you come here? He even let you come here by yourself, and didn't give you any bodyguard. Logically speaking, shouldn't a young lady like you have some attendants around you when you go out? Yi Zichen asked. Hee, I'll tell you a secret. Actually, I snuck out, Gu Luolin giggled. She really is a king child of a big family. Then why did you scare Kuei Lin and the others by telling them that you had a jade tablet your dad left for you? How could I? I threw away the talisman they left for me so that my parents wouldn't find me. I even threw away the protective talisman they gave me. At that time, I was just trying to scare them. Who knew that this group of fools would really be fooled by me? Gu Luolin laughed heartlessly, then winked at Yi Zichen from time to time. Wasn't my aura too real? That brat. Yi Zichen really wanted to slap that brat to death. She didn't have the jade tablet his father had left for him at all. She just scared Kuei Lin and the others. If Kuei Lin hadn't believed her, he'd have tossed the two of them away. Although I was just trying to scare him, some of what I said was true. If they dared harm me, their entire clans would be annihilated. What demons and Yao! If my parents wanted to take action, I'd annihilate them all. What are your parents' cultivations? I'm afraid you'd be scared to death, snorted Gu Luolin. Tell me. Let's see if you can scare me to death, said Yi Zichen. I'm not telling you. In a little while, my dad will probably come looking for you. You'll find out then. Gu Luolin stuck out her tongue. When Yi Zichen saw that she wasn't going to say anything, he decided to just pretend. Jiao Hai and Tai Tan were the rulers of a Yao nation, while Kuei Lin was the demon emperor. Gu Luolin said that her parents alone could wipe out an entire clan. Did she think they were transcendents? In the past, Yi Zichen had always thought he was pretty good at posturing. He never would have guessed he'd meet his match today. Just as Yi Zichen was speechless at Gu Luolin's posturing, the wind and snow suddenly stopped. This sudden change stunned Yi Zichen. For a moment, he thought Gu Luolin had kindly blocked the wind for him. When he probed her with his divine power and discovered that she hadn't done anything, he narrowed his eyes. Why did the wind and snow stop? Yi Zichen was just asking casually. He didn't expect anyone to answer. To his surprise, the eagle suddenly let out a caw. Gu Luolin's gaze darkened. Big Bai, are you telling the truth? Caw. The eagle let out another caw. Yi Zichen couldn't help but ask. Chapter 1661. Gu Luolin's tone carried a hint of pity, but her eyes were also filled with comfort for Yi Zichen. Yi Zichen's heart skipped a beat. His worries had finally come true. He was too far behind the others. Even with the help of the eagle, he still couldn't catch up. Yi Zichen extended his divine sense outwards. The palace at the top of the mountain was still quite a distance away. Even with his divine sense, it was still very difficult for him to reach the palace. Yi Zichen stood up and let out a deep sigh as he looked at the vague palace in front of him. You can't be thinking of committing suicide, right? Nephew, you can't be so weak. Gu Luolin grabbed Yi Zichen's hand and comforted him. Nephew. Yi Zichen glared at her and corrected her, then rolled his eyes. Don't speak nonsense. How big of a heart do I have to be to commit suicide? Then why are you standing there? Can't I just enjoy the wind? Yi Zichen glared at her. What's more, the eagle said that the gate opened, so it opened. Do you understand the phrase, seeing is believing? Big White is the guardian beast left here. Of course he's telling the truth. Fine, fine, fine. Even if it's true, then so be it. Who can be sure whether or not someone really went in? But if no one went in, then why would the palace gate open? Or perhaps someone went to the palace gate and had a snowball fight instead of going in. If that's really the case, then what did that person come all the way here for? To enjoy the joy of climbing high? I'm begging you to stop. Yi Zichen smiled wryly. He naturally knew that it was impossible. Everyone who went into the snowy mountains came for the palace at the top of the mountain. Yi Zichen was willing to cut off the head of anyone who didn't go in. Yi Zichen was naturally anxious when someone went in, but it was useless no matter how anxious he was. He was still on his way to the palace. Could he directly teleport to the palace? The reason why he made that guess was purely to trick him and make him feel better. Who would have thought that Gu Luolin wasn't just good at acting? She'd even added insult to injury. Her words just now had riddled Yi Zichen with 1,000 holes. Yi Zichen was truly afraid that Gu Luolin would stab him to death before he reached the palace, so he quickly begged her to stop. Am I wrong? Gu Luolin acted as if she didn't feel how stinging her words were, and continued to argue with Yi Zichen. Just say what I just said, is it possible? If the palace door is open, then someone must have pushed it open. Otherwise, how could it have been blown open by the wind? Stop talking. If you continue, then I'll jump down from here. Yi Zichen took a few steps forward, then pointed at the misty ground and shouted angrily. Whether you jump or not, I have to tell you the truth. The palace gate opened, so someone must have gone in. Ancestor, I understand. I beg of you, please don't say any more. Yi Zichen wanted to kneel down in front of him. He grabbed Gu Luolin's clothes and begged. I understand all of that. Just how can you stop worrying about the palace gate? I'm not conflicted. It's just that your attitude towards the opening of the palace gate is too careless. You need a mature elder like me to spur you on. Only then will you be able to move forward, Gu Luolin said with her hands on her waist. All right, I was wrong. I sincerely apologize for my mistake and repent for my careless attitude. I've given up on myself, so I've finally come to my senses. I definitely won't be so irresponsible in the future, so please don't say any more, okay? Yi Zichen smiled wryly. That's more like it. Gu Luolin clapped her hands and smiled. In truth, she'd only reacted this way because she'd recalled what her clan's elders often said to clansmen who didn't cultivate hard enough. She wanted to give it a try herself. When she finished speaking, she saw Yi Zichen's expression of sudden enlightenment. To tell the truth, it was pretty awesome. What would the clan elders do after consoling their clansmen? Gu Luolin frowned and thought back carefully. Then her eyes lit up, and she rested her chin on her hand like an elder. The palace gate was pushed open, so the people who entered were definitely the tomb's people. Big White told me that, in the eyes of the vicious beasts, this palace is a holy land. They wouldn't dare wander around or even break the door to enter. Yi Zichen thought Gu Luolin was going to argue about the previous topic again, but to his surprise, she started analyzing the situation rationally. Kuei Lin should be one of the people who got there faster than us. That's right. Yi Zichen nodded. The way he saw it, Kuei Lin was one of the people who'd entered the palace. A few days ago, he'd arrived in the Eagle's territory. Kuei Lin had fled in panic, so there was no way he'd given up on the idea of going to the palace. Based on Yi Zichen's understanding of Kuei Lin, not only would Kuei Lin not stop, he'd head there as fast as he could. Although 3 days didn't seem like a long time, it wasn't impossible for Kuei Lin. Of course, we can't rule out the possibility that someone else entered the palace, said Yi Zichen after a moment's thought. I don't care about anyone else. I just hope I don't run into Kuei Lin. Gu Luolin frowned and glared fiercely at the palace. Even now, she still held a grudge against Big White. I advise you to give up on that idea, said Yi Zichen, his gaze cold. Yi Zichen's gaze suddenly grew solemn. At the very least, before you leave this place, before your parents protect you, you'd best not provoke Kuei Lin without good reason. Why? Would he dare touch me? Snorted Gu Luolin. You're still too young. Yi Zichen sighed. Do you think that just because you scared him, you'll be able to scare him again in the future? Although Gu Luolin didn't answer, she didn't deny it. She still remembered how Kuei Lin had scared her so badly she didn't even dare move. She didn't think Kuei Lin would dare touch her again. But do you know why he didn't dare touch you back then? Because he was afraid of me. Yi Zichen chuckled. When he saw Gu Luolin's confident demeanor, he couldn't help but sigh at her naivety. No matter what they faced, they didn't think too deeply about it. You could say they were childish, but that just so happened to be the most precious thing about them. Although Yi Zichen didn't know how powerful Gu Luolin's elders were, he knew they were no ordinary people. If he were at their level, Yi Zichen might just let Gu Luolin continue thinking like this. However, his cultivation was too low. For Gu Luolin's safety, he had to tear her fairy tale-like thoughts to shreds. He didn't touch you because he could give up on the supreme treasure the eagle was guarding. As soon as she said that, Yi Zichen knew there was no need to hide anything. He might as well tell her everything. Do you understand Kuei Lin's personality? Do you know what kind of person he is? He didn't touch you because he's afraid of your family's power, but most of it is because the eagle is guarding the supreme treasure. He doesn't care about it at all. There's no need for him to risk something he can't control for the sake of something he doesn't care about. That's a huge risk. But the supreme treasure in the palace is different. It contains the opportunity to transcend. For Kuei Lin, it's a treasure he'll risk his life to steal. You can provoke him now, but he might still fear your family's power. But I'm sure that his desire to transcend fate will crush his fear of your family. When that happens, you'll be nothing but a paper tiger and pose no threat to him at all, said Gu Luolin. You snuck out of your family without any life-saving tools left behind by your parents. When that happens, what are you going to do when you face Kuei Lin? He's definitely the type to cut weeds by the root. If he hurts you, he'll offend your family. He might as well just kill you. Then kill all witnesses. Even if your parents find out about him in the future, he might have already comprehended the opportunity to transcend and become a transcendent. What will your family do then? At first, she was arrogant, then disdainful. In the end, Gu Luolin sat on the eagle's back and didn't know what to do. She had the temperament of a spoiled brat, but she was absolutely capable of listening and understanding what others were saying. Yi Zichen's words made sense, so Guluolin couldn't refute him. She'd never thought this deeply before, but now that Yi Zichen said it like that, she was truly afraid. Especially when Yi Zichen said that Kuei Lin had achieved a transcendent body. She was sure that her parents would avenge her, but in the end, a half-step was just a half-step. There was too much of a difference between transcending and becoming a transcendent. What would happen to her family? She didn't know why, but for some reason, an image of what would happen to her family appeared in her mind. What should I do? Yi Zichen smiled and patted her on the head. I hope we don't run into Kuei Lin. Even if we do, he won't attack us unless we force him into a corner. It doesn't matter if it's you or me. As long as there's a force that he's afraid of, he won't dare to act ruthlessly against us. I'll listen to you then, Guluolin said. All right. That's not right. Suddenly, Guluolin blinked her eyes and put her hands on her waist. I'm the elder here. Why are you lecturing me like the elders in the clan? Let's begin. You should be the one who listens to me. Tell me, did you do it on purpose? I don't have the time. Yi Zichen's indifference and impatience caused Guluolin's aura to plummet to its lowest point. Then I'll listen to you. But you have to remember, I'm your elder. I'll only listen to you here. When we get out, you have to listen to me. All right. Yi Zichen didn't want to argue with the girl too much. Instead, he treated her like a little sister. Screech. At that moment, the eagle suddenly stopped flying forward and circled in the sky. Guluolin listened for a moment, then translated for Yi Zichen. Chapter 1662. At the mountaintop palace, Great White, who couldn't go beyond its range of movement, put Yi Zichen and Guluolin down, then soared back to its territory. No wonder the eagle said it couldn't go any further. It was because of the barrier around the palace. Yi Zichen and Guluolin were able to safely pass through the barrier. It must have been left behind to prevent any vicious beasts from entering the mountain. This palace is so run down. Guluolin couldn't help but mutter when they arrived in front of the palace. The palace was built atop the shining mountain peak. It looked as if someone had neatly carved out the mountain peak and built the palace on top. There was no ice or snow within the barrier, and even the wind was almost non-existent. The palace was the only thing on the mountain peak. There was no vegetation or decorations around it. It was just a palace standing there, but it actually gave people a feeling that it was quite out of place. The palace was built entirely out of red bricks, just like a normal palace. From the outside, one could tell that it used to be grand and majestic. However, the palace was quite old and hadn't undergone any repairs, so it gave off a rundown feeling. In truth, it wasn't particularly rundown. It was just that both Yi Zichen and Guluolin had high hopes for the palace. What they saw was far different from what they'd expected, so Guluolin said something like that. It's all right. The palace was truly different from what they'd expected. Yi Zichen smiled, then looked away and walked towards the front of the palace. As expected, the front door was pushed open. It was clear that the palace hadn't been open for a long time. Yi Zichen could even smell the damp stench of decay. Are we going in? Guluolin stood beside Yi Zichen and looked up. She was a trustworthy person. Since she'd said she'd listen to Yi Zichen's arrangements, she wouldn't allow herself to be willful in the slightest. However, she was actually quite afraid. For some reason, standing around the palace gave her an eerie feeling. Unlike before, when they stood in front of the palace, they could faintly see a red carpet. Since we're already here, we have to go in and take a look, said Yi Zichen. Then you walk in front, I'll follow you. Guluolin shrunk back. I feel like this place is a bit creepy. To be honest, Yi Zichen really did feel that way. There was clearly a barrier here, so the heavy snow couldn't fall here, and the wind couldn't blow in. However, one could feel the whistling cold wind in front of the palace's door. It was quite horrifying. Look, at that moment, Guluolin suddenly pulled on Yi Zichen's sleeve and screamed as she pointed at the opening of the palace gate. Yi Zichen looked over, but didn't find anything special. What's wrong? I think I saw a ghost in there just now. Gu Luolin stared at the interior of the palace and said, Ghost shadow? Yi Zichen looked around for a while longer, but did not see where the ghost shadow that Gu Luolin spoke of was. Don't be so jumpy. You're making me a little scared. No matter what, he had to enter the palace. Otherwise, he would have come here for nothing. Yi Zichen licked his lips, then walked in front of the palace gate and pushed it open slightly. Yeah! Gu Luolin screamed again, causing Yi Zichen to nearly jump up in fright. However, what terrified him even more was that a scream also sounded out from the palace. Ah! Someone's here. Yi Zichen instinctively pushed Gu Luolin back. This was a completely instinctive reaction, but he'd forgotten that in terms of cultivation, Gu Luolin was actually a bit higher than him. When he entered the palace, he discovered that the interior was actually much more luxurious than the exterior. The walls were inlaid with expensive luminous pearls, which illuminated the interior of the palace. Yi Zichen stood in front of the gate and looked ahead. He gathered the 5 elements around him and carefully observed the interior of the palace. The one who'd screamed was most likely someone who'd just entered the palace. It might even be the ghost Gu Luolin had seen. However, the one who'd screamed clearly wasn't Kuei Lin. As a demon emperor, Kuei Lin had to be steady and composed. Given his vast experience, he wouldn't be frightened by a single scream. The other great emperors wouldn't be frightened either. Could it be an emperor-level expert? If it was them, they really had to admit that they were lucky enough to enter the palace so quickly. The palace's main hall was covered in a red carpet, but there was no one in sight. Gu Luolin, who was completely terrified, acted like a child, especially a girl. She seemed to have forgotten that she was actually a strong expert, as she carefully grabbed onto Yi Zichen's clothes and hid her head behind his back as she secretly looked around. Ah! Ah! Suddenly, Gu Luolin screamed once more. Another cry came from a hidden door in the corner of the palace. Yi Zichen's body trembled in fright. He gulped and glanced at the hidden door. Only then did he realize that there really was someone standing in the shadows. Brother Monin. As soon as he said that, the person hiding in the hidden door peeked out. After a long while, Brother Yi. The person who'd entered the palace ahead of them was none other than Go Monin, who'd run into Yi Zichen earlier. When he confirmed it was Yi Zichen, he patted his chest with lingering fear. You scared me half to death. You scared me half to death, said Gu Luolin angrily. I'm sorry. Go Monin scratched his head and smiled. He still had that honest expression on his face. Then he smiled at Yi Zichen. I didn't see her by Brother Ye's side before. Where did you find this little sister? I'm her elder. Gu Luolin scoffed. Yes. You are my elder. Yi Zichen comforted Gu Luolin a bit, then shrugged towards Go Monin. Go Monin could also tell that something was off, so he smiled and didn't continue on the topic. The few of them walked side by side inside the palace. There were 5 secret doors on each floor. Behind each secret door were 5 floors, and behind each secret door were also 5 secret doors. Didn't you say you were going to leave? Yi Zichen chuckled. Actually, I wanted to leave. Go Monin chuckled and said, when Brother Yi looked for me, I was actually worried that my cultivation level would be a burden to you. Moreover, there were so many great emperors around. I didn't think I could obtain any opportunities, so I wanted to leave. However, I still want to come. That's right. Go Monin said. We're already here. I'm not willing to leave just like that. Let's give it a try. Chapter 1663. As soon as he said that, Go Monin was just about to push the door open when he sensed no footstep. When he turned around, he saw Yi Zichen looking at him solemnly, then heard Yi Zichen's voice. Yi Zichen said, The door was open before you arrived? That's right. The door to the palace was already open, and I could vaguely make out that person's silhouette. I've been looking for him since you arrived. Otherwise, you wouldn't have scared me so badly. Gomonen nodded, then pushed open another door. Behind it was another empty room, but this time there were no more 5 doors. We've reached the end. It seems we went the wrong way. Let's go back. As he spoke, Gomonen retraced his steps. Although the rooms and doors were like a maze, they could still go back the way they'd come. It was as if this wasn't a test of luck, but patience. Once they'd gone through all the possible doors, they'd naturally reach the room with the true treasure. However, when he turned around, they were still standing in the same spot. Gomonen tilted his head and glanced at them. Brother Yi, don't just stand there. There were people before us. If they found out ahead of time, all our efforts would have been for naught. They were still in a state of trial and error. Yizichen, Guluolin, and Gomonen walked side by side. Yizichen said nothing along the way. Instead, he studied Gomonen's expression out of the corner of his eye. Brother Monen, I get the feeling that you're not worried at all about people entering before us. Brother Yi, are you doubting me? Gomonen pushed open the door again and again, then looked straight ahead. Ever since we met here, I've sensed that Brother Yi doesn't trust me very much. Brother Monen, you're overthinking things, said Yizichen. Someone entered before me. Of course I'm worried, but there's no point in worrying, is there? Gomonen continued to push open the door, then laughed bitterly. In terms of cultivation, I'm not particularly strong compared to those who entered the mountain. I was fortunate enough to enter the palace earlier than them. In truth, I'm quite satisfied. As for the palace? It's impossible for me not to be interested in the treasures inside. However, I also know my own limit. It would be best if I can obtain it, but if I can't, I won't force it. Even at this point, Brother Monen, it's rare for you to have such an attitude, said Yizichen. Like I said, I'm just more self-aware. After saying that, Gomonen took the lead and pushed open a door. The empty room made Gomonen's eyes flash with disappointment. Another empty room. Letting out a long sigh, Gomonen couldn't help but mutter as he looked at the room that didn't have any traces left. They traveled all the way to the palace and even created so many secret rooms. If there really is an opportunity, it should be given to us. Pushing the door again and again, it's really... Brother Monen, are you anxious? Who's in a hurry? We've been walking for a long time. Gomonen looked at the 5 doors in the room and was speechless, as if he had lost the strength to push the doors open in disappointment. How about Brother Yi give it a try? Maybe I'm just unlucky. I'll go. The seniors at home all said that I'm very lucky. Guluolin ran over to one of the doors with a giggle and pushed it open with her hands. The moment she opened the door, several arrows shot out from the room, which had never had any traps before. Yizichen, who had maintained his vigilance, instantly appeared in front of Guluolin and hugged her. At the same time, the arrows also hit the walls of the room. Brother Yi, are you all right? Gomonen quickly ran over and saw that Yizichen wasn't injured at all. Instead, Guluolin, who had pushed the door open, had a cut on her shoulder. Tears welled up in Guluolin's eyes as she was hugged by Yizichen, as if she was about to cry at any moment. The arrows don't seem to be poisonous. Gomonen grabbed the arrow that had hit the wall and walked over. The arrow was just a normal arrow, and Yizichen could see a trace of blood on the arrowhead. Yizichen also glanced at the arrow, then took out some medicine to apply on the wound. Then, he tore a piece of cloth from his clothes to bandage Guluolin's wound. Be gentler, Guluolin said in pain. Be more obedient. Yizichen smacked her head. What did we say before? I told you to listen to me when you came here. Didn't I tell you to push the door open? It's fine if you push the door open, but why didn't you wear the spiritual energy armor? You need to be vigilant at all times in here. If it wasn't for me reacting fast enough, you would have been skewered like a meat skewer. It's fortunate that the arrows weren't poisonous. What do you think I should do if they were? As he scolded Guluolin, Yizichen helped her bandage her wound. Guluolin lowered her head in silence. She actually felt that this sort of door-pushing game was rather interesting, so she wanted to give it a try. Who knew that there would be traps in the room? Brother Yi, don't blame her too much, Go-monen comforted. I'm not blaming her, I'm just reminding her. Regardless of whether you're in the tomb or outside, you need to be absolutely vigilant at all times. That's a requirement of being a cultivator. She's always so careless. Even if she's skilled, she'll still die if someone ambushes her. Yi Zichen said this from the bottom of his heart. After interacting with Gu Luolin for so long, he noticed that the girl had a problem. She wasn't vigilant at all. It was fine in the peaceful era, where there were very few riots and robberies. However, this was an era where people would fight for resources, opportunities and treasures. Gu Luolin didn't care about anything when she was in the clan, and could live innocently like a princess. However, this wasn't her home. Danger lurked everywhere, and she could fall into dire straits at any moment. She's still so careless. Even if she can leave the tomb safely, she will pay the price for her carelessness when the Terminators attack the Third Era in the future. This price isn't something that can be made up for with a simple scolding. It might even be her life. Since she was with Yi Zichen, and the two of them were somewhat related, Yi Zichen decided to let this fatal flaw of hers remain. Seeing that Yi Zichen was truly angry, Gu Luolin pouted as if she was about to cry. I know I was wrong. I won't do it again. Well, I don't mean to blame you much. Yi Zichen's heart softened when he saw Gu Luolin's sullen face. You just have to remember, there is absolutely no harm in staying vigilant at all times. Vigilance is the first thing that keeps us alive. Have you read Romance of the Three Kingdoms? Is Zhang Fei a valiant general? Was he beheaded by 2 soldiers in the end? Romance of the Three Kingdoms? Gu Luolin raised her eyebrows. Yi Zichen couldn't help but slap his forehead. He nearly forgot that he wasn't in the modern realm, and the Romance of the Three Kingdoms was a made-up novel. Even if it was slightly similar to history, it wasn't something that people here could know. Brother Yi, you've really put in a lot of effort. Go-monen didn't interrupt. He waited until Yi Zichen finished his scolding before smiling. But Brother Yi, the girl beside you is really a lucky star. Maybe the door she just pushed open really is the room we want to go to. You're saying, in the past there were no traps when we entered the room, but there just happened to be a trap in this room. The problem is very obvious, right? Go-monen smiled. The arrows don't feel old at all. Yi Zichen also examined the arrows. Then Brother Yi, do you understand something? Go-monen smiled as he watched Yi Zichen walk over to the wall and examine the other arrows for a long time. After that, he nodded with a smile and said, It seems like someone set up a trap. Brother Yi, you're an understanding person, said Go-monen. This person should be the person who came in a bit earlier than me. I'm not sure if there are other traps inside, so how about this? I'll scout ahead, while Brother Yi and Brother Yi stay behind. With that, Go-monen's Yao spiritual energy transformed into a suit of astral energy, which covered his body with a set of divine artifact-level armor. This was a good example, so Yi Zichen used Go-monen to explain it to Gu Luolin. Do you see that? That's the right thing to do. When facing an unknown environment, you have to be prepared for your own survival. If everyone was like you and walked in blankly, then even if you were an emperor, you'd still die. Roar! It would have been better if Yi Zichen hadn't said anything, but now that he did, Gu Luolin really didn't hide anything. She took out all her life-saving treasures. For a moment, her entire body glowed with a myriad of colors. She was armed from the soles of her feet to the top of her head. Unfortunately, none of the defensive treasures she wore were particularly bulky. They were just like the clothes she usually wore. Just from the light they emitted, it was obvious that they weren't ordinary. Color. This is silk my mother obtained from the Poison King of the West, which only falls once every 3,000 years. She asked a Grandmaster Artificer to refine it for me. There are 69 small-scale defensive spiritual formations imprinted on it. My father killed the head of an earth dragon in the northern wastelands, then used its belly skin to refine these boots for me. There are 37 small-scale defensive spiritual formations, 6 support spiritual formations, and 2 wind-type spiritual formations. This hat is a soul-protecting pearl my mother obtained from the nine-tailed fox empress. This bracelet is a magma crystal my third uncle obtained from a volcano 3,000 meters below the surface of the lava. Gu Luolin stood in place, listening to Yi Zichen talk for a full 10 minutes. She introduced the 16 divine treasures she wore. 6 of the most unassuming rings were forged from the most precious materials by a grandmaster artificer. What's more, there were at least 20 offensive and defensive formations imprinted on them. It was no exaggeration to say that Gu Luolin's equipment was comparable to all the assets of a first-rate faction. Chapter 1664. Brother Yi, are we still going in? Gomonen was quite shocked. Although he wasn't the wealthiest among the emperors, he was still slightly above average. Even so, it took him quite a bit of effort to get a decent set of divine artifact battle armor. Then, he looked at Gu Luolin. Everything on her, from her hat to her boots, including the rings on her fingers, were all of the best among the best of the best. What's more, they were all refined by artifact refinement grandmasters, and there were even formations imprinted on them. He couldn't take it anymore. If this continued, his jealousy was going to act up. Go, go, go! Yi Zichen also shouted. What? I didn't finish the introductions yet. Gu Luolin blinked. Yi Zichen really had to give it to this ancestor. No matter if she was flaunting or showing off, she always had an innocent look on her face. I can't let her continue like this. If she continues, then don't even mention Gomonen. Even I want to directly snatch it away for Gu Luolin, this local tycoon. Your set of equipment is enough. There's no need to introduce it anymore. Let's hurry in. Yi Zichen dragged Gu Luolin in. Yi Zichen dragged Gu Luolin in, but before he left, he didn't forget to say something. Your equipment is too flashy. Can you turn off all the special effects? Oh, okay. The equipment that lost its shine was no different from normal clothes. However, nobody would be able to guess just what was hidden in the equipment. If they could meet someone who entered before them, then Gu Luolin's equipment might be able to display an unexpected effect. When the 3 of them entered the room, Gomonen led the way in the heavy armor. This room was truly very different from the other rooms. It was obvious from the size of the building. What's more, there were 6 paintings hanging on the walls of the room. They weren't any famous paintings. 5 of them were paintings of 5 children, while the last one was a piece of pure white paper. They didn't dare to look at the paintings when they just entered the room, since they didn't know if the people who entered before them had left any other traps for them. There doesn't seem to be any other traps. After carefully looking around, Gomonen narrowed his eyes and said carefully. It wasn't just Gomonen. Yi Zichen didn't feel any other traps in the room either. There are indeed no other traps. Shall we go and take a look? Gomonen pointed at the painting on the wall. Yi Zichen nodded, then walked in front of the painting while maintaining absolute vigilance. That's right. There were indeed a few children who looked to be 2 or 3 years old in the painting. These children each occupied a painting by themselves. Some were lazily lying on the ground, some were excitedly grabbing butterflies in the painting, some had strange eyes and evil smiles on their faces, some were hiding behind a huge rock with only their little heads showing, and some had cold faces and eyes filled with arrogance. 5 children, 5 different species with completely different personalities. The standard of this drawing is really bad. It's not even as good as mine. Gu Luolin raised her head. Unexpectedly, Gomonen snorted, "You're the best!" As soon as he finished speaking, he walked to the side as if he did not want to be associated with Gu Luolin. Why is he doing this? Gu Luolin was puzzled. Yi Zichen glanced towards Gomonen and couldn't help but smile. Hating the rich. Hate the rich, but I didn't flaunt my wealth. Gu Luolin maintained her innocent expression. Actually, she wasn't faking it, it was her true thoughts. What Yi Zichen and company did not know was that Gu Luolin actually had better equipment that she had yet to take out. The reason she had used slightly worse equipment was because she was afraid that Yi Zichen and company would think that she was flaunting her wealth. From her point of view, no matter how poor a person was, that was probably the best they could do. If Yi Zichen and Go Monin knew what Gu Luolin was thinking, then this girl might really be strangled to death right there and then. Poverty truly limited one's imagination. Go Monin went to explore the other parts of the room, while Yi Zichen continued to stand in front of the painting in an attempt to comprehend its meaning. Yi Zichen did not feel like the 5 paintings were useless. The 5 paintings all depicted children who looked to be only 2 or 3 years old. However, there were 2 infants in the paintings that revealed expressions far beyond their age. If the 5 paintings were realistic, then the children were definitely not as simple as they seemed. At the very least, they had their own consciousness, and it was extremely clear. Brother Yi. Just as Yi Zichen was pondering over the meaning of the paintings, Go Monin suddenly waved towards him. Hearing that, Yi Zichen walked over, while Gu Luolin followed behind him. Look! In front of Go Monin was a crossbow, which looked very similar to God-destroying crossbow. Yi Zichen squinted his eyes. God-destroying wrath was a supreme treasure that was ranked 9th on the Ice Blade ranking. The crossbow was just like its name, God-destroying. A long time ago, the God-destroying crossbow was ranked 4th. However, since its arrows were single-use items, the power of the God-destroying crossbow was halved after all the arrows were used up. Even so, even a monarch-level expert would die if they were hit by the crossbow. The arrows just now were shot by the God-destroying crossbow? Yi Zichen looked outside the room and felt a bit of fear when he thought about how the arrows were shot by the God-destroying crossbow. When he looked towards Gu Luolin, he couldn't help but sigh in amazement at her luck. If Yi Zichen had been slightly distracted just now, then Gu Luolin might really have become a kebab. Most likely. Go Monin nodded. His eyes narrowed into a line as he looked at the room. The God-destroying crossbow is a supreme treasure. To be able to possess such a supreme treasure, it must be a Dharch with a high status in the celestial race. With the God-exterminating crossbow as a mechanism, staying here, it would be fine if the person died, but if the person didn't die, the God-exterminating crossbow would definitely fall in the hands of that person. To be able to leave such a precious treasure here, Brother Yi, it seems like we. I know what you mean, said Yi Zichen. What Go Monin wanted to express was very obvious. The people who came here didn't want the God-exterminating crossbow anymore. This meant that he had found the entrance to the palace's treasure trove, and the entrance to the treasure trove was definitely in this room. No matter what, don't waste your time coming here. Keep the God-exterminating crossbow. Yi Zichen instinctively put the crossbow away, then glanced at Go Monin. Brother Monin, are you interested in this crossbow? I'll give it to Brother Yi, Go Monin said with a bright smile. I'm all by myself, unlike Brother Yi, who has forces under his command. The God-exterminating crossbow is considered a city defense weapon. It might be more useful for Brother Yi. Then I won't be courteous with you, Brother Monin. Yi Zichen pretended to put the crossbow away, but Gu Luolin frowned. Why didn't you ask me? Chapter 1665. Although Yi Zichen hadn't obtained the tomb's true treasures, he'd gained quite a bit on this trip. Needless to say, the 5 elements crown guarded by the eagle was a supreme treasure. It was as if it had been tailor-made for Yi Zichen. So long as he wore it, his comprehension of the Tao of the 5 elements would advance by leaps and bounds. Yi Zichen didn't know how the others in the tomb got, but he was certain that as long as they didn't get the Transcendence's inheritance, no one would dare to say that they got more than him. Gu Luolin hugged her shoulders and pouted. Of course, she did not want the God-exterminating crossbow. She was a very ordinary girl. She liked beautiful and good-looking equipment. Just like what she was wearing now, it could make her look like a fairy. The design of the god-exterminating crossbow was too wild. It was not suitable for a fairy like her to use. She was just angry. After entering the palace, Yi Zichen seemed to have forgotten her status as a senior. Congratulations, Brother Yi, on obtaining the god-destroying crossbow. With such an unparalleled god-destroying crossbow on the 10th Divine Mountain, I'm afraid that very few people would dare to cause trouble on your Divine Mountain. Gomonen smiled and cupped his hands. It's fortunate that Brother Emonan was willing to part with it. Gomonen was the one who discovered the god-exterminating crossbow. Logically speaking, this ownerless divine weapon should belong to him. He'd given up on the god-destroying crossbows of his own accord, which was why they'd fallen into Gomonen's hands. He was naturally grateful to Gomonen. However, the joy on Yi Zichen's face was obvious. The 10th Divine Mountain was an outsider. In terms of foundation, Yi Zichen couldn't compare to the Ocean Emperor and the others. Even with the profound pavilion and the rulers of the outside, Yi Zichen was certain that the 10th Divine Mountain was still the weakest of the 10 Divine Mountains. After all, he couldn't compare to the other Divine Mountains in terms of foundation. If the god-exterminating crossbows were placed in the Divine Mountains, they would not be able to intimidate the masses or strike fear into the tens of thousands of races. At the very least, it could intimidate the other races. Of course, the most important thing was to deal with external enemies. The god-exterminating crossbow's god-exterminating crossbow was not an exaggeration. However, even if the arrow was used up, the god-exterminating crossbow's god power would still be there. Being able to kill a sovereign lord was based on the premise of being able to hit the target. Take Gu Luolin for example. As long as she reacted quickly enough, it would be very difficult for the crossbow bolt to hit the target. This was also the reason why this heaven-defying divine artifact was ranked 9th. Even back when there were arrows, it was only ranked 4th. Instability. It was this instability that caused its ranking to be lower, but if it could kill the giant Terminator, Yi Zichen had seen huge beasts before. Although he couldn't say that the god-destroying crossbow would hit its target 100% of the time, it would at least hit its mark 9 times out of 10. As long as he had enough time to create the crossbow bolts, coupled with the secret weapon he had given to Zhua Mo a long time ago, it would not be impossible for them to stop the giant Terminator beast. Brother Yi, I still have to remind you. Perhaps he was afraid that Yi Zichen would get carried away. Gomonen spoke up again. The power of the god-exterminating crossbow is obvious to all, but the crossbow bolts required for it are not an easy task. Not just any material can be used as the raw material for the god-exterminating crossbow bolt. Look, Gomonen placed the bolts he'd shot from the god-destroying crossbow in front of Yi Zichen. In fact, if one were to look closely, they would see that there were serious cracks on the crossbow bolt. These crossbow bolts are forged from black jade, but they are still unable to withstand the might of the god-exterminating crossbow. If Brother Yi wants to unleash the full potential of the god-exterminating crossbow, the forging materials will have to be even more stringent. Brother Yi, please don't think too simply. The forging of the god-exterminating crossbow's bolts is definitely not an easy task. Brother Monen, you're right. Yi Zichen nodded. He naturally didn't believe that ordinary arrows could become the god-exterminating crossbow bolt. If any arrow could unleash the might of a god-exterminating crossbow, then the god-exterminating crossbow would truly be a heaven-defying weapon. However, he hadn't expected that even black jade wouldn't be able to withstand its might. After all, black jade was an extremely expensive material. It seemed that once he took the god-exterminating crossbow back, he'd have to contact a few artificer grandmasters to try it out. Otherwise, if he mass-produced the god-exterminating crossbow bolts, the bolts would shatter midway and lose less than 1/10 of their divine might. How would he be able to stop the giant Terminator beast then? Gomonen's reminder stopped there. They were both smart people, so there was no need to explain everything in too much detail. Otherwise, others might even mistake him for thinking that Yi Zichen was an idiot, which was why he'd explained everything in such detail. I really don't know what's so silly about it. Isn't it just a crappy crossbow? It's so ugly, yet you treat it like a treasure, muttered Gu Luolin with a frown. Gu Luolin muttered with a frown. You didn't even find the secret passage to the room. Who knows, the people who came here before might have already taken away the inheritance in the palace. You're still so happy about it. Gu Luolin actually just wanted to reprimand Yi Zichen so that he would take her seriously as a senior. However, her words were like a bucket of cold water that extinguished Yi Zichen's joy. Perhaps he really had gotten too carried away and forgotten the most important reason they'd come here. Yi Zichen hurriedly suppressed his joy and focused on finding the secret passage to the room. I can't waste any more time. The people who entered the tomb should have all arrived by now. They might even be on their way to test the door. It'd be fine if it was one of them, but if it was an enemy, then it'd be troublesome. Actually, there wasn't anything special about the room. The most obvious thing was the 6 paintings on the wall. Afterwards, Yi Zichen focused all his attention on the painting. He wanted to find what was special about it. Brother Yi, it seems like these paintings are the key. An hour later, Go Monin carefully inspected the room like a minesweeper. The clean walls didn't have any hidden mechanisms. Since there were so many paintings in a room without any mechanisms, then the problem must be with them. I know. Yi Zichen had been paying attention to the paintings from the very beginning. While Go Monin was searching for the mechanisms in the room, Yi Zichen also paid attention to the paintings. Rather than saying that the problem was with the paintings, it would be more accurate to say that the painting without any patterns was the problem. The painting without any patterns was the most special. The other 5 paintings all had patterns. However, it was pure white, and it was placed on a different wall from the other 5 paintings. This painting is very special. Go Monin also noticed the painting without any patterns. He walked in front of it and studied it carefully, then turned around to look at the other 5 paintings with patterns. These 5 paintings are rather strange as well. How so? Yi Zichen wanted to hear what Go Monin had discovered. Look at these 5 children. They represent 5 different personalities. What's more, these 2 paintings. Go Monin pointed at the last 2 paintings. These clearly aren't expressions that children should have. This kind of arrogance and demonic charm is too jarring on them. Hearing that, Yi Zichen felt a bit disappointed. What Go Monin said was the problem he'd noticed as soon as he entered the room. But then again, it made sense. Go Monin had only just noticed the paintings, so it was understandable that he would have the same thoughts as he did when he first saw them. Little did Yi Zichen know, even after studying them for a long time, that was all he noticed. In fact, he even used his fiery eye to study the entire painting. The only thing worth paying attention to was the children's expressions. Maybe we're paying attention to something wrong, Yi Zichen rubbed his chin. Maybe these 5 paintings are just normal paintings. The important thing is this painting without any patterns. Go Monin nodded subconsciously, then pressed his hand down on the painting. The room didn't change at all. In truth, Yi Zichen had already tried Go Monin's actions. He hadn't just pressed, he'd even tried to move the painting. He'd even used his divine power to try and activate the hidden mechanisms within the painting. There was no reaction at all. The entire process was stuck here. Although he still had no clue what was going on, he was certain that the problem lay with the paintings. As mentioned earlier, Yi Zichen had tried to move the painting, but no matter how hard he tried, it remained fixed to the wall. After all, Yi Zichen was a ruler-level expert. One could imagine how strong he was. If even this sort of strength couldn't move the painting in the slightest, then the problem was obvious. Brother Yi, have you tried to destroy the paintings? Go Monin suddenly had an idea. No. This was indeed a very novel idea, but it was obviously an idea without any possibility of success. If the secret passage could only be opened by destroying the paintings, then why were the paintings still sitting there unscathed? Shoo! Suddenly, Yi Zichen's expression froze. He put his finger to his lips. Gomonin and Gululin's expressions froze as well. After everyone held their breaths, they could clearly hear footsteps outside the wall. Someone's coming. 12 hours after Yi Zichen and the others entered the palace, someone finally found their way here. The room was so silent that they could hear their heartbeats clearly. The footsteps were simply too close. If they weren't mistaken, the newcomer was only one wall away from them. "Did you retrieve all the arrows outside?" They couldn't speak. If they did, the people outside would definitely sense it. Moreover, the ripples of divine sense transmissions might even be detected. Although the room was very effective against divine senses, it was better to be safe than sorry. It was better to be safe than sorry. Yi Zichen and the others could only converse verbally. Gomonin nodded, then pointed at the 3 arrows on the ground. I hope they didn't notice the marks on the wall. Based on the marks on the wall, it was easy to determine the general direction of the marks. Why are there so many marks here? Suddenly, the person outside said what Yi Zichen and the others were most worried about. Everyone's hearts leapt to their throats, but at that moment, the footsteps shifted to the left. There was the sound of a door being pushed open, and then there was no more sound. They didn't come in. Yi Zichen and Gomonin both let out long sighs of relief. Only Gu Luolin's eyes shone with excitement. "Brother Yi, we have to hurry." With great difficulty, Gomonin swallowed his heart that was about to reach his throat. His expression was solemn. Yi Zichen also knew that they had to hurry, but the problem was. Chapter 1666. Gu Luolin raised her head proudly in the room with the painting hanging on the wall. She crossed her arms and looked at Yi Zichen and Gomonin proudly. She felt like she was extremely smart. Yi Zichen and Gomonin had searched so hard for clues, yet they couldn't find anything. She was the only one who guessed it. She really wanted to praise herself for being smart. "What did you guess?" Yi Zichen looked towards Gu Luolin with a surprised expression. He knew very well that he and Gomonin were the ones searching for clues. Gu Luolin continued to wander around the room like nothing had happened, and did not have any intention of searching for clues at all. But now, she said that she found out what to do. Yi Zichen did not doubt the truth of her words. Although he and Gomonin had spent more time observing and searching, it was very possible that they had made a mistake. "Then can I tell you?" Gu Luolin pursed her lips and giggled. "You have to beg me. If you beg me, I might tell you." "You and I," Gu Luolin shook her little head incessantly, looking very excited. At that very moment, Yi Zichen suddenly covered her mouth. Gu Luolin struggled to speak, but when she saw Yi Zichen place his finger on his lips, he signaled her to be quiet. "Ta-ta," someone else came. "It seems like it really is the time when most of the people have entered the palace." Not long after the first group of people entered the room, another group of people appeared outside the room. Yi Zichen's heart, which had just calmed down, tensed up once again. Yi Zichen and company held their breaths as they pressed against the wall, then heard the people outside whisper. "Should we go through this door?" The voice had clearly reached the door of the room. From their voices, Yi Zichen could tell that they were not people he knew. "Let's follow the order. If there are no surprises, we should need to go through all 5 doors at the same time. Let's follow the order bit by bit." "Yes, that's right. You guys should follow the order." Yi Zichen covered Gu Luolin's mouth with his only hand. At that moment, he could only clench his teeth, as if he was hoping that the person who said they were going to enter this room would go to the room that the person behind said. "I have a feeling that this room is the right one, and I feel like there's someone inside." "Stop bullshitting. How many times have you felt it on the way here? Just follow the order." "All right." As the footsteps got further and further away, the 2 people outside the room walked towards the room beside Yi Zichen's. "Looks like the main force has arrived." Yi squinted his eyes, then looked solemnly at Gu Luolin and Go Monen. Just a moment ago, the imperial stage being outside had actually sensed the presence of someone in the room. Gu Luolin, Go Monen and Yi were completely clueless. Only Gu Luolin said that she knew the crux of the problem. Yi directly shouted towards Gu Luolin. His tone caused her to subconsciously think of how her uncle felt towards her when he was angry. "What are you doing? I said you're begging me," Gu Luolin said with some grievance. "Stop fooling around. Didn't you hear that more and more people are coming?" When Yi saw that Gu Luolin was about to cry, he quickly changed his tone. "My lady, just tell me what you found out, all right?" "That's more like it." Gu Luolin's mood improved a little. She said, "Do you still remember the doors in the palace when we came in?" "Door? What's so special about them?" Go Monen asked. "There were 5 doors when we entered the palace, and the rooms after we entered also had 5 doors. Now we have to enter a total of 5 rooms." Gu Luolin reached out her hand and opened the door. "The crux is this 5. Look at the paintings in the rooms. There are still 5 paintings with patterns on them. Then, the only thing you can think of from these 5 is the Tao of the 5 elements. Look at the backgrounds of these 5 paintings, and use the colors to determine that the 5 fortune paintings actually correspond to the 5 elements. The blank painting left behind, if I am not wrong, should follow the order of the 5 paintings on the wall and place your hand on it. Then, use the Tao of the 5 elements to solve it." Yi and Go Monen looked at Gu Luolin in shock. Neither of them expected her to say something like that. However, from her words, it seems like what she said was indeed the way to solve the problem. Yi quickly walked in front of the paintings. Only then did he notice that the backgrounds of the 5 paintings were indeed different. His attention was completely attracted by the children's expressions in the last 2 paintings, so he subconsciously ignored that. "Gu Luolin, you're so smart." Yi hugged Gu Luolin and kissed her on the cheek. He did not have any other thoughts, he was simply too happy. "I still have to get married." Gu Luolin wiped her face. "But according to what Lady Gu said, we need someone who is proficient in the Tao of the 5 elements," Go Monen said. "Ever since the 5 elements' great emperor disappeared, the heart of the 5 elements was destroyed. Very few people walk the Tao of the 5 elements anymore. Don't you know? This person in front of us is someone who is proficient in the Tao of the 5 elements, and has already completed all 4 of them." Gu Luolin pointed at Yi "Brother Yi, you actually don't say so much. Time is of the essence, we can't be so lucky every time. Tell the people who followed us to avoid us. What Gu Luolin said isn't impossible, we need to try." With that, Yi let out a deep breath, then stood in front of the white paintings. "Gu Luolin, tell me the order of using the Tao. Call me Great Aunt." Gu Luolin frowned, but still obediently looked at the 5 paintings. "Fire. Virum." Yi palm instantly turned bright red, but no flames appeared. What they needed to do was to use the Tao of the 5 elements on the paintings, and not to release them. When the palm of the fire element Taoist technique pressed on the scroll, the room suddenly emitted a crisp and clear sound. "Brother Yi." Go Monen's eyes lit up. "If I'm not wrong, then that's the sound of the secret door appearing. It seems like Gu Luolin really is the solution." Yi who was using the Tao, also felt joy in his heart, and waited for Gu Luolin to continue. "Wind." Just as Yi was changing the power of the 5 elements on his palm, footsteps suddenly appeared outside. "Brother Yi, someone's here." At that moment, Go Monen, who was standing at the door, suddenly focused his gaze. "Focus on deciphering it. I'll guard this place. Before you decipher it, I definitely won't let anyone enter the room." With that, Go Monen began to construct a barrier at the door. Chapter 1667. 2 elders stood in the room where Gu Luolin had almost been shot by the god-destroying crossbow. From their appearances, It was clear that they were treacherous. One's appearance came from one's heart. Someone with this kind of appearance was definitely not a loyal person. Even if they were currently loyal to someone, they'd definitely betray their master in the face of personal profit. Huang Fu, what are you doing there? The azure-robed elder glanced at the black-robed elder. After entering the five-gate maze, they quickly understood its true meaning. Given the order they'd entered, they should have gone through the leftmost door. There's someone in that room. The black-robed elder pointed at the door. So what? It's not like we didn't run into others along the way. Didn't we just see someone walking in front of us? We'd better follow our own order. If we mess up, all our previous efforts will go to waste. Old Yuchi, have you gone senile? The black-robed elder glared at him. Displeasure flashed through the azure-robed elder's eyes, but the black-robed elder continued. The palace is only so big. How could there be so many rooms? When we first entered, every door was very small, and the others were very close to each other. But after we pushed open the doors, 5 new doors appeared, and behind each door were rooms the same size as before. It's obvious that these rooms are isolated. You don't need to tell me that, said the azure-robed elder. The black-robed elder pointed. I really don't know how Zhou Wu took a liking to you. I've already said it all. Do you still not understand? The 2 elders were the heads of the Yuchi and Huang Fu clans, 2 of the 4 great clans the God Emperor had raised. Yuchi Kong and Huang Fu Yuming. The 2 of them had fallen out with the God Emperor before entering the tomb. The rise and fall of their clans depended on whether or not they could obtain the transcendence fortune they desired. If they came out of seclusion with their transcendent bodies, the 2 clans would reach the peak of their power. Failure. Given Zhou Wu's vengeful nature, their 2 clans would most likely be exterminated. The 2 of them were the last ones to enter the paradise left behind by the Demon Emperor's remnant soul. However, they didn't stay at the Demon Emperor's remnant soul's place. Instead, they chose to enter the snowy mountain. Therefore, he did not see the 2 of them at the foot of the snowy mountain or at the Devil Emperor's peach blossom. Yuchi Kong still didn't quite understand the meaning behind Huang Fu Yuming's words. Huang Fu Yuming took a deep breath and explained. Since it's a separate space, how can anyone who enters the room be sensed? Yuchi Kong came to a sudden realization. Soon after, Huang Fu Yuming pointed at the arrow hole in the room and said, Look at the arrow hole. It's obvious that the arrow came from this room. The other rooms can be directly pushed open, but the door of this room cannot be pushed open. You should understand now. This room isn't a separate dimensional space. Yuchi Kong said. Dimensional space was a space that was separated from the plane. The 2 spaces were in a parallel state, and there would be no intersection between them. The room Yuchi Kong and company were in was connected to Yi Zichen's room. This meant that these 2 rooms were in the same space. Compared to the other rooms, which were all dimensional spaces, the answer was obvious. This was the real room that the people who entered the tomb had been searching for. You finally understand. Huang Fu Yuming shouted hatefully when he saw that Yuchi Kong had finally understood. The 2 of them were grasshoppers tied to the same rope. Transcendence or not, they had to work together to ensure the safety of their clan. Yuchi Kong was an outstanding talent amongst the monarchs, and was even stronger than the Bai family's old ancestor. Huang Fu Yuming was rather satisfied with working with him. But this guy's brain reacted so slowly. Huang Fu Yuming was truly worried about whether or not working with Yuchi Kong was a wise choice. There's definitely someone in this room. Perhaps the transcendence fortune we've been searching for is in there. Yuchi Kong's eyes were filled with shock. In truth, he had been on tenterhooks ever since entering the tomb. He was worried that the clan would be targeted by Zhou Wu. He was also worried that if they couldn't obtain the transcendence fortune, then what would happen to the clan if they left so decisively? Along the way, he began to think of a way out for himself and his clan, but who would have thought they really were fated to transcendence? You should have seen that divine arbiter girl, right? Huang Fu Yuming said. She's not far behind us. If she's allowed to enter this place and notice an inkling, then we won't be able to defeat her who's proficient in spatial Dao arts if we fight in such a narrow space. As for her status with Zhou Wu, you know it. She's his loyal aide. She's absolutely loyal to Zhou Wu. If we betray him, she'll hate us to the bone. I don't want the Transcendence fortune to be snatched away by that girl. Huang Fu Yuming's eyes flickered with ruthlessness. That was just his nature. After learning that Zhou Wu wasn't fated to transcendence, he'd abandoned him without hesitation. He could imagine Zhou Wu's hatred for him even if he used his toes to think. He had a great desire for transcendence, or rather, everyone did. The real room was right in front of them. He didn't want anyone to come out and mess things up. Then what are we waiting for? Just as Yu Qi was about to attack, he was stopped by Huang Fu Yuming. Don't. Since we're sure that the real room is behind this door and there's someone inside. As long as we keep an eye on it, they definitely won't be able to escape. Right now, we need to pay attention to the others outside. As long as we attack here, those who haven't entered the subdimension will definitely find us. That also means that we need to end this quickly. We need to blast open this door and deal with the people inside before those people rush over. What do you mean? Yu Qi frowned. Don't hold anything back. Finish the battle as quickly as possible. Yu Qi expression tensed up. He nodded heavily, then blasted the door without holding anything back. Dong. The loud explosion outside was clearly audible in Yi Zichen's room. When Yu Qi and Huang Fu Yuming blasted the door open, they could see Go Monen's face turn pale. The energy blasts of two monarch-level experts were a huge burden on Go Monen. Are they crazy? Aren't they afraid of attracting other people over? Gu Luolin glared. Yu Qi and Huang Fu Yuming's conversation could be heard clearly from within the room, so she knew that there were two people outside the door. I'm afraid that they want to deal with us as quickly as possible, so they don't care about anything else. Go Monen clenched his teeth as large beads of sweat dripped down his face. Meanwhile, his hands continuously formed hand seals to stabilize the barrier in front of the door. This time, people really did come knocking. Gu Luolin was no longer as playful as before. Do you need my help? No need. Go Monen shouted. Go and tell Brother Yi the sequence. We'll be safe once Brother Yi opens the secret passageway. Otherwise, even if we stay here, their voices will only attract more people. The door will be broken through sooner or later. Yi Zichen continued to focus on resonating with the scroll through the Tao of the five element. Every single rumble in the room had a huge impact on him. In terms of urgency, he was more anxious than anyone else. However, it was just as Go Monen had said, the door would be broken through sooner or later, so they could only open the secret passageway. Otherwise, when the imperial monarchs arrived, and in front of these imperial monarchs who had transcended the creation realm, those imperial monarchs would definitely start fighting. With their cultivation realms, it would be a problem for them to survive the chaotic battle, let alone get a share of the spoils. Even if it was just Yu Qi and Huang Fu Yuming, Yi Zichen and company would be doomed once they entered the room. With their personalities, they definitely wouldn't let them out alive. There was no way out, so the only way was to open the secret passageway. All of a sudden, a clear sound rang out in the room. Yi Zichen quickly called out. Gu Luolin. Lightning and finally lightning. Yi Zichen had figured out the sequence of the hanging scrolls. They were fire, wind, rain, lightning, lightning. The Tao of the five elements in Yi Zichen's body circulated furiously. Lightning and lightning were the hardest to control, since they had a lot in common, so it was very difficult to separate them individually. No one knew if a single mistake would cause all their efforts to go to waste, so Yi Zichen could only carefully separate the lightning element bit by bit. Crack! Another clear sound rang out. At that moment, 4 sounds rang out in the room. Only the final element remained. Dong! The door to the room rumbled continuously, but it wasn't the sound of Yuchi Kong and company smashing the door. Instead, it was the sound of Go-Monin being knocked back against the wall. This caused Go-Monin to be gravely injured, causing him to cough up large mouthfuls of blood. However, he immediately crawled up from the ground and continuously formed hand seals in spite of his injuries. Cough! Blood continuously flowed out, and Go-Monin's expression showed that he was at his limit. Move aside. Gu Luolin pulled Go-Monin behind her and pressed her hand against the door, causing a green glow of energy to appear in her palm. It was no easy task to defend against the attacks of two great monarchs. At that moment, Gu Luolin finally understood just what kind of pressure Go-Monin had been enduring. What kind of pressure? The door was already showing signs of breaking, and Gu Luolin was unable to hold on any longer. Rumble. At that moment, a passageway leading downwards suddenly opened up on the white scroll. Yi Zichen's eyes lit up with joy. It's open, hurry over. Only then did he notice Go-Monin's injuries. He didn't even have the time to be shocked. Chapter 1668. The barrier around the door was already on the verge of shattering. Although Gu Luolin's spiritual power had stabilized the barrier, even with her Wind Dao heart, it was difficult to defend against the repeated attacks of a monarch-level cultivator. I can't leave. If I leave, they'll come in. Gu Luolin frowned and pointed at the passageway behind the painting. Hurry up and go in while I can. I'm not interested in transcending. Once you're inside, even if outsiders come in, all I have to do is mention my parents and they won't dare do anything to me. Boom. Boom. Outside, Yuchi Kong and Huang Fuyoming's attacks showed no signs of weakening. In just a few short breaths of time, they seemed to have grown even more ferocious. Gu Luolin's bitter struggle was clearly no longer of much use. The barrier around the door would soon break. Hurry up and go in. Mention your parents? Are you afraid you won't die? Roared Yi Zichen. Did you forget what I told you? We're already here. Do you really think mentioning your elders will help? At least I'm your elder. Gu Luolin suddenly tilted her head back and laughed. You're my nephew. If I don't protect you, who will? I wasn't wrong this time, was I? With that, she turned around and did her best to defend against Yuchi Kong and the others' attacks. The clear smile on Gu Luolin's face was so dazzling. What's more, when she looked back, Yi Zichen was shocked. He didn't say anything else. He didn't notice that Gu Luolin also assumed he'd left. I've finally done something like an elder, Gu Luolin thought to herself, but at that moment, someone struck her neck with a knife hand. When she turned around, she saw Yi Zichen's smiling face. You, kid, I haven't fallen to the point of having you guard my back. Besides, you're the young miss of a great family clan. If anything happens to you, your parents will destroy the Upheaval Alliance. Yi Zichen picked Gu Luolin up and hurried to the passageway. Although Go-Monin was heavily injured, he still had a sliver of consciousness. When Yi Zichen carried Gu Luolin over, he struggled to get out of the way. These are recovery pills. Yi Zichen placed Gu Luolin in the passageway, then took out several bottles and placed them on the stairs. Brother Yi, I won't be going down. It will take at least an hour for the passageway to open and close automatically. If someone is outside using the Tao of the 5 elements to control it, they can close the passageway in an instant. If I don't close the door for you, Yuchi Kong and the others will follow even if we go in. Yi Zichen suddenly stopped and looked at Go-Monin meaningfully. The barrier is about to break. I'll leave Gu Luolin to you. Brother Mo Nan, you should understand what I mean by take care of, right? Brother Yi, take good care of her. You know her background. Yi Zichen suddenly turned around and pressed his palm against the scroll once more. Without any spiritual energy to stabilize the barrier, the cracks grew more and more obvious. Yi Zichen circulated the 5 elements art in his palm, and just as he said, the door to the secret chamber began to close at a speed visible to the naked eye. Boom! It was at this moment that the barrier at the door could no longer withstand the attacks of Yuchi Kong's group and shattered. Two crazed old men ran into the room and saw that the door to the passageway was completely closed. A secret passage. Yuchi Kong and Huang Fu Yuming arrived in front of the scroll in a flash. Their eyes turned red when they saw that the secret passage was closed. "You're too late." Yi Zichen smiled, then put Gu Luolin into the tunnel. His worried heart was finally at ease. When she entered the tunnel, it should be safe. Yi Zichen leaned back against the wall and squatted on the ground as he looked at the old man, his eyes bloodshot. Yi Zichen continuously condensed and used the Tao of the 5 element. Even if he didn't use it, it still took a lot out of him. Yi Zichen continued to consume the spiritual recovery pill as if he didn't care about Yuchi Kong and company. "Kid, you know the way to open the secret passage. If you don't want to die, I don't want to die. Who's so bored that they want to die? What's more, I have a beautiful wife at home and such a huge property under my name. I don't want to die." "Then tell me how to open the passageway," Huang Fu Yuming shouted madly. "You won't be able to open it even if I tell you. Why bother?" Yi Zichen pouted. "I think you're courting death." Huang Fu Yuming's hand was about to slam down, but Yuchi Kong stopped him. "What guts! A mere ruler dares to speak to the two of us in such a manner? You must be the alliance leader Yi that Zhou Wu hates to the point of grinding his teeth. I didn't expect the two of you to have heard of this lowly one's name." "Yes, I am Yi Zichen." Yi Zichen did not hide anything, and looked at Yuchi Kong and Huang Fu Yuming. "If my guess is correct, the two of you are Zhou Wu's loyal dogs. You will bite whoever he tells you to bite. Patriarch Huang Fu and Patriarch Yuchi, right? Speaking of which, it's strange that your two loyal dogs aren't by Zhou Wu's side. I heard that he has no fate with transcending and can't enter this place. Yet, he actually let the two of you enter? Kid, it looks to me like you don't know how to write the word death." Huang Fu Yuming shouted furiously. "Brother Huang Fu, please calm down." Yuchi Kong, who was quite envious of Huang Fu Yuming, actually calmed down. He gently stopped the enraged Huang Fu Yuming and looked at Yi Zichen kindly. "Alliance head, ye might not know, but we are no longer working under Zhou Wu. Zhou Wu is truly pitiful. He worked so hard to raise the 4 major factions. The Bai family was destroyed, and you two betrayed him. That means only the Shin family is left," Yi Zichen said. "That's true. You two look like crafty people. You know that Zhou Wu doesn't have the fate of transcending, and you two are still loyal to him even after coming here. That's quite surprising. Yuchi, move aside." Huang Fu Yuming instantly released his aura, which created several currents of spiritual energy in the not-so-spacious room. Yi Zichen, who was sitting in the corner, tensed up. "Huang Fu Yuming is stronger than Xianji if I'm not mistaken." Just the pressure of spiritual energy was enough to make Yi Zichen reveal a bitter expression. However, Yi Zichen was not afraid at all. He knew very well that the two of them didn't dare to kill him, or rather, they couldn't bear to kill him. Only he knew how to open the passageway. Yuchi Kong and Yuchi Kong were counting on him to go down. "Brother Huang Fu, don't be angry." Yuchi Kong also transmitted via divine sense at this time. "This brat has the method to open the passage in his hands. If we kill him, we'll have to spend quite a bit of time to break it even if we can. The commotion we caused just now wasn't small, and the people outside are already coming over. We don't have the time to open it." "So what? If anyone dares come, we'll just kill them," snorted Huang Fu Yuming, his eyes bloodshot. Although Huang Fu Yuming hadn't taken over a divine mountain and become an emperor, he was a true emperor. In terms of methods, he wasn't any weaker than the lords of the Holy Lands. Even the emperors of the divine mountains had to treat him with respect. Why should he be humiliated by a brat who just entered the ruler realm? Right now, his only thought was to kill Yi Zichen to vent his anger. As for the method to open it, when they'd entered, they'd already seen the passageway and the layout of the room. The problem clearly lay in the unpatterned painting. He'd lived for so long, and he'd gone down many secret realms. Opening this sort of secret passageway was a walk in the park for him. Given enough time, he was certain he'd be able to open it. As for the people who'd entered the palace, he didn't care about emperors at all. Even if Shui Yang and the others came, he and Yuchi Kong could fight them if they joined forces. The way he saw it, the only people they'd find troublesome were the divine arbiters proficient in the Tao of space. Brother Huangfu, don't forget that the Demon Emperor is here too. Yuchi Kong's transmission caused Huangfu Yoming's expression to stiffen slightly. They hadn't encountered the Demon Emperor on their way here, so they'd completely overlooked his existence. If the Demon Emperor had come here, he and Yuchi Kong really would have had a hard time dealing with him. You can ask him, but I'll say this first. If this brat says anything nasty again, I'll kill him even if you try to stop me. Huangfu Yuming snorted angrily, walked up to the painting, and started searching for its mysteries. He'd always been prepared for every eventuality. That was his way of doing things. The pressure in the room dissipated, and Yi Zichen could finally catch his breath. Just now, he'd been soaked in sweat from head to toe, as if he'd been soaked in water. In the end, an emperor was still an emperor. No matter how many emperors Yi Zichen interacted with, he was still an emperor. No matter how many emperors Yi Zichen dealt with, that didn't mean he was strong enough to contend with them. Unfortunately, Yi Zichen had long since used up all his divine-grade spirit recovery pills. He could only take ordinary ones to recover. However, they were too weak. Even now, he'd recovered less than 30% of his strength. Yuchi Kong and the others could see Yi Zichen taking pills, but they chose to ignore him. The way they saw it, even if Yi Zichen recovered to his peak, crushing him would be as easy as turning over their hand. Alliance head Yi. What can I do for you, family head Yuchi? Yi Zichen smiled. In truth, Alliance head Yi knows full well that there's no way you can escape us. It'd be easy for us to kill you, said Yuchi Kong calmly. Yuchi Kong looked at Yi Zichen indifferently. If that's the case, then why did Alliance head Yi intentionally provoke us? Not necessarily, right? Alliance head Ye's confidence comes from the Yao Ceiling Pagoda? Yuchi Kong chuckled. The Yao Ceiling Pagoda is a divine artifact with decent defense, but against me and Brother Huangfu, breaking its seals isn't impossible. Is that so? Alliance head Yi, there's no need to doubt me. An emperor's methods are beyond your imagination. Then what should I do? Tell us how to open the tunnel. Once we're inside, you can close it for us. I know you know how to do it. We saw it just now, laughed Yuchi Kong. If you persist, you'll die. With Brother Huangfu's temper, I can't hold him back for long. I trust you understand, Alliance head Yi. Aren't you human? Not necessarily, right?